Chapter 1579. Lin Sun said indifferently, I can see that you're very confident in your strength. However, do you really think the result will be as you've guessed? As he spoke, he took a step forward. With just a single step, a formless and terrifying aura emanated from Lin Sun and covered this area. Jian Qingchen's eyes flickered, and he seemed to be surprised. When Lin Sun took the second step, Jian Qingchen couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and the aura around him suddenly rumbled and circulated. At this moment, Lin Sun's body was flowing with the brilliance of the Wei. Although he hadn't made a move, the aura around him was oppressive like a lofty mountain and as deep as a vast ocean. Once it erupted completely, it was unimaginable how terrifying the power would be. Jian Qingchen obviously realized this. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his expression was tranquil. However, his eyes were surging with boundless sword essence. The fairy battlefield will arrive in 9 months. Are you sure you want to make a move now? Jian Qingchen frowned. He had heard of Lin Sun's deeds and even conducted special research on Lin Sun. He knew that Lin Sun was a formidable enemy that couldn't be underestimated. But when he confronted Lin Sun at this moment, Jian Qingchen found that Lin Sun's aura wasn't inferior to any of the 8 absolutes of green destiny. The fairy battlefield? That's a matter for the future. Now it's between us. As Lin Sun spoke, he took the third step. Boom! The nearby space seemed like fragile glass, and it rumbled as it shattered and collapsed. With Lin Sun at the center, a terrifying pressure of the Saint Tao rumbled as it swept out. Humph! A sharp light flashed in Jian Qingchen's eyes as he took a step forward. His aura changed along with it, and his restrained aura was suddenly released at this moment. Clang! A round world of swords appeared behind his head, and countless sword chi surged like a tide within it. It could cut stars, break the universe, and shock ghosts and gods. Such a divine Wei aura caused Lin Sun's eyes to be filled with surprise. There was no doubt that Jian Qingchen had also stepped into the threshold of creating his own method, and the sword Tao he cultivated was even more overbearing and fierce than Lin Sun had expected. Boom! 2 different types of supreme pressure of the Saint Tao collided in this instant, and it was simply like the sun and moon were fighting, causing deafening rumbling to resound. With the 2 of them as the center, the earth suddenly collapsed, forming a huge crack that spread to the extreme distance. The nearby mountains, rocks, plants, and trees instantly exploded into powder. If one looked down from the sky, the mountains and rivers in an area of 500 kilometers seemed to have fallen into oblivion and collapsed. At this moment, Lin Sun's temperament was as otherworldly as an immortal, and his momentum was as frightening as a demon. On the other hand, Jian Qingchen was like a peerless sword that was hidden deep within a sheath. At this moment, he revealed its edge, and he revealed the arrogant bearing of a peerless sword saint. Between the 2 of them, it was just a clash of auras that threw the universe into chaos. Lin Sun said coldly, I'll give you a chance. If you don't lose within 3 moves, I'll let you live. Lin Sun, you are really good at scheming. Jian Qingchen chuckled, and his gaze was as sharp as a sword. If you can't defeat me within 3 moves, you'll definitely realize that I have the ability to interfere with that lady's heavenly tribulation. At that time, you'll definitely change your mind. Then, he changed the topic, however, I can promise you 3 moves. Xue Qingyi sees you as a blade and wants to weaken the power of the other realms. Why can't I do the same? See me as a blade? Aren't you afraid of cutting yourself? Lin Sun said coldly. Jian Qingchen laughed and sighed. Do you know? If I didn't recognize your combat strength, I would have been killed the moment you appeared. However, it's also because I've realized that your combat strength isn't ordinary that I'm willing to fight you to the death. If I die, the ancient rule realm won't fall apart, but it'll be very difficult for us to contend against the other realms. If you die, the ancient desolation realm will be leaderless. It will no longer be a threat to our 8 realms. We can easily destroy it, You don't want to see these two results, and I don't want to see them either. So, why should I fight you to the death and let the other realms take advantage of it? Jian Qingchen thought for a while and then said, in short, even if we want to deal with you, we need the 8 realms to do it together. Do you understand? Lin Sun said with a sneer, you don't have to talk so much nonsense. Why don't you just disappear? Jian Qingchen shrugged and said with a smile, it's simple. I just don't want to. Boom. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly took a step forward, and a Taoist sword appeared without a trace of smoke and fire. 108,000 swords. Tai Xian's sword spirit? I didn't expect you to obtain the inheritance of Tai Xian's sword emperor. In an instant, Jian Qingchen's eyes burst with a terrifying cold light. He put his hands together as a sword and let out a roar. Confrontation. A pitch-black and deep strand of sword chi surged into appearance abruptly. It was like a ray of light that had been cut out from the veil of eternal night, and it was filled with an oppressive aura of destruction, silence, and death. As soon as the sword came out, it was like darkness, bringing the shadow of death. The 2 streaks of sword chi, which were imprinted with the power of 2 peerless figures, clashed in midair. Boom! The world was turned upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. The brilliant and blazing sword light, sword chi, sword intent, and sword light converged and burst out, producing a terrible turbulence that swept and spread like stormy waves. Wherever it passed, the void was in disorder, mountains and rivers collapsed, and all things collapsed. There were also many terrible visions that shocked the world. But at the first moment of the confrontation, Jian Qingchen frowned and was shocked. He realized that the horror of Lin Sun's sword was far beyond his imagination. Without hesitation, he planned to change his move. But Lin Sun's second attack had already come. Obviously, Jian Qingchen didn't intend to give him a chance to react and deal with it. Swish. This time, Lin Sun still used one sword move. But this sword showed a completely different charm. Its sharpness was unparalleled, unrestrained, and its momentum was unparalleled. As soon as the sword came out, the world fell silent, and time seemed to stand still. Anyone who saw this sword would feel small, desperate, and suffocated. This sword was called No Return. Jian Qingchen's face finally changed. The 108,000 swords had made him feel pressure, and he had not really resolved it yet. He was still fighting fiercely. But this sword made him feel a real threat, which made him feel as if there was a blade on his back and a chill run down his spine. Does this guy have such terrible attainments in swordsmanship? Without any hesitation, Jian Qingchen suddenly stretched his body, waved his sleeves, and formed a sword seal with his 10 fingers. He looked serious and serious, which was rarely seen. Earth and earth, the sword is unstoppable. Heaven and earth, the sword is unruly. Wind and wind, the sword is unstoppable. Thunder and thunder, the sword is unstoppable. The 4 supreme swordsmanship of heaven, earth, wind, and thunder condensed into 4 sword seals, sitting in the 4 directions around Jian Qingchen. The 4 extremes of Wei. This was Jian Qingchen's trump card. For a time, the aura of the 4 sword seals was overwhelming, making him look like a sword god. His power rose to the extreme in an instant, crushing the wind and clouds in all directions. Boom! At this moment, the world shook, and the earth-shattering explosion resounded through the sky, even covering the sound of thunder punishment in the sky. It would not be an exaggeration to say that even if ordinary peerless sages were here, they would definitely perish if they were affected by the shockwaves. Bang! Jian Qingchen couldn't bear it first. His body was hit by the terrible sword light, and he staggered back a few steps in the void. His face was pale, and he looked frightened. His feather robe was damaged, and his long hair was disheveled. On the other hand, Lin Sun's body merely shook, and his expression remained calm from the beginning until the end. Only his black eyes grew even colder. In fact, He was slightly surprised because this was the first opponent he'd encountered since he entered the Nine Regions battlefield that could withstand the 108,000 swords and no return. Jian Qingchen took a deep breath. The vital energy and blood in his body were roiling, and it was very uncomfortable. His expression carried a rare solemn expression. In the ancient Great Heaven domain, he was regarded as the #1 expert of the younger generation, and he was known as the best amongst his peers. This was the first time since he started cultivating that he was at a disadvantage in a battle of the same realm and was suppressed. "Looks like I've underestimated you." Jian Qingchen's gaze was like lightning while his aura changed, and he emanated a terrifying battle intent that shook the stars. "This only proves that you're inferior to me. Watch carefully, this is the third move." As he spoke, Lin Sun's figure vanished into thin air, and he appeared before Jian Qingchen in the next moment. Jian Qingchen's pupils constricted abruptly, but he remained fearless. He flipped his palm, and an inch of sword light suddenly appeared on his palm. It was only an inch, but it glowed brilliantly like the sun. It was the embodiment of his strength being condensed to the extreme. At the same time, a mutton-fat jade bottle appeared in Lin Sun's hand, and it was boundlessly empty. The great Tao boundless bottle. Jian Qingchen's body stiffened while a lethal aura of danger surged into his heart, and he cried out in his heart, "Shit!" He practically instinctively retreated without the slightest hesitation and teleported with all his might. Bang! However, he was still a step too late. A strand of sword chi flashed out from the mutton fat bottle that was only a few inches long. It was still a sword technique that he had inherited from Battle Emperor Wu Yang, no return. However, its power was twice as strong as before. 4 peerless saints of the same realm, the slightest difference in strength was enough to decide the outcome of a battle, let alone a difference of 2 times. Amidst a terrifying roar that shook the heavens and the earth, Jian Qingchen's body was blasted away like a kite with a broken string. His clothes were tattered, and the dark gray armor that covered his body was pierced by the peerless sword chi. His chest was pierced through, and blood flowed out. Lin Sun frowned. He could tell at a glance that the armor was a powerful saint treasure. If it hadn't saved him, Jian Qingchen wouldn't have just been seriously injured. Swoosh! As he thought of this, Lin Sun didn't slow down at all. His expression was cold, and his figure was like an illusion as he teleported through the void and attacked. From the very beginning, he had never intended to let Jian Qingchen leave alive. Chapter 1580. Despicable! Jian Qingchen roared furiously. His hair was disheveled, and there was a bloody hole in his chest that was still bleeding. Moreover, his face was ghastly pale. The worst thing was that the power of Lin's sword was so terrible that the remaining breath of swordsmanship was still raging in his body. Jian Qingchen didn't expect that Lin Sun's third move would use a mysterious holy treasure, and its power was so terrifying. If it wasn't for the high-grade holy-level armor covering his body, this strike alone would have been enough to give him a fatal blow. "Didn't you say that people like you and I don't care about criticism and criticism? Why are you getting angry out of humiliation now?" Lin Sun's figure had already rushed to him in an indifferent and cold voice. The Yuan killer sword in his hand was flowing with demonic and bloody light, and he slashed down angrily. Boom! The sword chi was furious, tearing through the sky. "I just didn't expect you to be so despicable." Jian Qingchen's expression was livid. A divine sword that was pure black like iron and branded with dense Saint Tao markings suddenly floated up into appearance before him, and then he slashed down forcefully. Dang! Amidst the extremely ear-piercing sound of collision, sparks shot towards the surroundings while divine radiance erupted. Although Jian Qingchen, who was already severely injured to begin with, managed to block the sword's strike, the impact caused him to cough up blood. He staggered backward and nearly fell from the sky. He took a deep breath and forcefully restrained the resentment in his heart, and his pale and almost translucent face was filled with iciness. As a peerless figure, his state of mind and willpower had been tempered to an extremely terrifying level. Even when he was in a dangerous situation, he didn't panic. But the anger and hatred in his heart could not be suppressed. He was too careless. He thought that Lin Sun would not dare to fight with him, because no matter if it was the camp of the Ancient Desolation Domain or the camp of the Daluo Ancient Domain, it would be disadvantageous, and the other domains would only benefit from it. But he didn't expect that Lin Sun didn't care about this at all. He was like an unscrupulous madman who wanted to take this opportunity to fight to the death. With no time to think, Lin Sun came again. "You don't want that girl's life anymore?" A cold light flashed in Jian Qingchen's eyes. Without any hesitation, he formed a strange seal with his fingers. Buzz! A wooden sword suddenly appeared in front of him. The wooden sword was 3 fingers wide and 2 feet and 4 inches long, with a scarlet sword tassel fluttering in the wind. The sword edge was blunt and thick, and the sword body was engraved with an ancient and strange inscription of the Great Tao, Imperial Order. The wooden sword was originally an ordinary item, but because of this character, it gave off a supreme aura that seemed to command the world. Rumble! As soon as Lin Sun approached, he was blocked by an invisible breath of sword Tao. Even his sword couldn't move forward. It was the aura of the wooden sword. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. Right at this moment, Jian Qingchen's expression was cold and firm as he said coldly, "I have treasures too." He waved his sleeve. The wooden sword that was inscribed with the character, Imperial, rumbled abruptly. Faintly, it seemed as if an extremely mighty and tall figure had floated up into appearance and stood on the wooden sword, and the aura it emitted was simply like the ruler of the sword Tao that covered the heavens and the earth, vast and boundless. The rumbling tribulation clouds in the sky were startled and began to churn violently. At the same time, Lin Sun's body stiffened, and he felt a tingling pain all over his body. An extremely oppressive and terrible pressure of sword Tao came to his face. There was no doubt that this was Jian Qingchen's trump card. As the top one in the younger generation of the great Luo ancient region, Jian Qingchen naturally had no lack of treasures. But this wooden sword was the most precious one he had. He had always kept it in his collection, and he didn't want to use it unless it was a life-and-death situation. This sword may not be able to kill you, but it's more than enough to destroy the fate of that girl. Jian Qingchen's eyes were full of sharpness. He hated. Since he started his cultivation, he had never suffered such a big loss. Now he was seriously injured. How could he not hate? The more unyielding a person was, the more he couldn't bear such a blow. "Go!" He spat out a word from his lips, full of disdain. The wooden sword soared into the sky, and the character, Imperial, flowed with obscure and supreme aura, making the mighty figure that emerged on the sword look like a god. But at this moment Lin Sun also moved. The laws that enveloped this expanse of the world suddenly showed a trace of stagnation, and it fell into a momentary standstill. Everything seemed to have stopped. It was like a frozen picture, and Lin Sun had become the only moving track on the picture. Forbidden divine ability. Bang! The great Tao Tower of No End appeared, and at this moment, boundless dark golden light drifted out and completely covered the wooden sword. When Jian Qingchen reacted, he just happened to see that the wooden sword that he treasured like a treasure was forcefully suppressed by a pagoda that seemed to be made of divine gold before it could even display its might. The key was that he didn't even notice how the pagoda appeared. No matter how experienced and knowledgeable Jian Qingchen was, he had never seen such a strange and unbelievable scene, and his body trembled. Bang! In the next moment, the wooden sword was directly suppressed and absorbed into the pagoda. From the beginning until the end, it was actually unable to struggle free. At the same time, Jian Qingchen suddenly coughed up a large mouthful of blood, as if he was struck by lightning. he immediately noticed that the connection between him and the wooden sword had been completely severed. No. This is impossible. This is the sword that great Emperor Greenfeather carried with him when he became an emperor. How could it be suppressed and absorbed? No matter how strong Jian Qingqian's mind was, he couldn't help but panic at this moment. He felt astounded, and he didn't dare believe his eyes. He knew very well how extraordinary the wooden sword was. If it wasn't restricted by the laws of the 9 regions battlefield, the might of this sword was sufficient to kill a great saint, and even a king saint would fear it, because the sword was branded with the brand left behind by an emperor when he became an emperor. How could an ordinary saint treasure compare to such power? Yet now, the wooden sword was suppressed before it could even display its might. How could Jian Qingqian accept this? This is your trump card? It's terrifying indeed. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be of much use. Lin soon tore through the sky with a cold gaze, and the dark red Yuan killer sword swept out with a terrifying torrent of blood. Bang! When looked at from afar, it seemed like a river of purgatory had descended from the sky with the intention of annihilating everything. Jian Qingqian didn't hesitate to turn around and flee. His injuries were extremely severe, and if he delayed any longer, his situation would only worsen. Unfortunately, he underestimated Lin Sun's determination to kill him. Zhao Jingxian was like a reverse scale in Lin Sun's heart, but Jian Qingqian actually wanted to subdue Zhao Jingxian and take her in. How could Lin Sun tolerate this? It could be said that from the moment he saw Jian Qingqian, Lin Sun had no intention of letting him go. Kill! The Yuan killer sword swept out in all directions. Jian Qingqian moved so quickly that he avoided the attack in the blink of an eye. This also showed how terrifying this person was. He was injured to such an extent, but he could still avoid Lin Sun's attack. If it were any other top saint, he would have been killed countless times. However, before Jian Qingqian could heave a sigh of relief, his figure suddenly stopped, and his expression changed. He didn't hesitate to retreat. Whoosh! A wisp of an illusory blade of flowing light suddenly descended where he stood just now, and the space there was silently sliced open with a perfectly straight rift. Broken blade. However, the broken blade at this time was different from before. It was full of divine splendor, and its blade was shining with a jade-like luster. The 3 obscure Taoist patterns on it were flowing with a sacred light rain. In short, the broken blade at this time was a real-life saint weapon. In the months since he left the ancient wasteland world, Lin Sun had traveled to many realms. The broken blade, which was nurtured in the chaotic hole in his body, had also transformed from a life royal weapon into a life saint weapon. Although it was still incomplete, its power was no longer the same as before. Previously, the broken blade was activated by Lin Sun with the mystery of impermanence chop. It successfully blocked Jian Qingqian's way and forced him to retreat. Boom! Behind him, Lin Sun seized the opportunity and slashed out with his sword. Jian Qingqian's long hair danced wildly, and he also realized that he was in a desperate situation. He roared, "Open!" With a terrible roar, Jian Qingqian's body fell directly from the air and hit the ground hard. His body was cracked, blood was flowing, and his muscles and bones were broken. However, he still had some strength left. With some unknown secret method, he bounced up and fled again. Lin Sun couldn't help but be moved. A peerless figure like Jian Qingqian was really not easy to kill. Not only did he have all kinds of inheritances and secret treasures, but his foundation was also extremely terrifying. However, this also strengthened Lin Sun's killing intent. Boom! On the way, Jian Qingqian fled, and Lin Sun chased after him. Every strike Lin Sun made was blocked by Jian Qingqian with all kinds of life-saving means, including magical secret methods and dazzling treasures. Even so, Jian Qingqian couldn't change his situation. Lin Sun was like a shadow, chasing after him without giving him a chance to breathe. Along the way, Jian Qingqian coughed up blood frequently. His Tao foundation was damaged, and his body was broken like cotton, dripping with blood. For the first time in his life, he was chased so miserably. Under the stimulation of death, he seemed to have gone crazy. The only thought in his mind was to escape. As long as he could survive, there would be a day when he would make a comeback. Not long after, a door floating in the void appeared on the distant horizon. It was the exit of the secret realm. Jian Qingchen, who was seriously injured and on the verge of death, actually burst out with unprecedented speed and power at this moment, teleporting at full speed. Lin Sun, I will repay this debt 100 times or 1,000 times in the future. Jian Qingchen's voice was filled with resentment as he roared. As he spoke, he had already taken a step forward and leaped into the door of the secret realm. Unfortunately, you won't have the chance. However, at this moment, Lin Sun's figure appeared in front of the door of the secret realm and blocked it. The Yuan killer sword in his hand had already been slashed out. The surging scarlet sword qi descended from the sky like a surging Styx. At this moment, the resentment and anger on Jian Qingchen's face suddenly froze. His eyes protruded as if he couldn't believe it. So he was worried that I would counterattack before I died, so he didn't really kill me. He didn't hesitate to attack me until I exhausted all my strength to escape. When this thought appeared in his mind, Jian Qingchen's mind, vision, and body were already drowned by the boundless scarlet sword qi. Chapter 1581. Puff. Jian Qingchen's body was cut open in an instant, and then exploded. Blood rained down like a waterfall. The Yuan killer sword produced a clear sound, absorbing Jian Qingchen's saint blood. Lin Sun gasped for breath, and his cheeks were so pale that they were almost transparent. It should be noted that from the beginning of the fight, he had used the 2 killing moves, 108,000 swords and no return, to injure Jian Qingchen. In addition, in order to kill Jian Qingchen, Lin Sun successively used the Infinite Way bottle, the Forbidden Passing, the Tower of Endless Way, the Broken Sword and other treasures. It was no exaggeration to say that this was the first time Lin Sun had encountered a formidable enemy since he stepped into the Saint Realm. Of course, the reason why Lin Sun exposed so many skills was very simple. He was worried that Zhao Jingxian would be disturbed. Otherwise, Lin Sun was confident that he could defeat Jian Qingchen in a fair fight, even if he didn't use those hidden treasures. However, Jian Qingchen's strength still left a deep impression on Lin Sun. Even before, in order to avoid Jian Qingchen's desperate counterattack, Lin Sun was like a fish swimming in a lake. The fish took the bait, but if he wanted to catch it successfully, he had to exhaust its strength bit by bit. In this way, he could catch it conveniently. Just like when he was chasing Jian Qingchen, if he was pushed too hard, Jian Qingchen was very likely to fight back with all his strength, which would undoubtedly lead to unexpected danger. Jian Qingchen thought that he had the hope of escaping, so he kept struggling to escape. Imperceptibly, his remaining strength was consumed again and again. In the end, when he was about to fight Lin Sun with all his strength, he was already exhausted. Clatter! Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and a blazing clear light swept out, wiping away the remaining flesh and blood of Jian Qingchen. Silver, Tian, clean up the spoils. Lin Sun gave them an order, and then turned back to the place where Zhao Jingxian was going through the tribulation. The person he was most concerned about was Zhao Jingxian. As for Jian Qingchen's death, it was insignificant. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. Under the sky, Zhao Jingxian was still going through the tribulation. His situation was not good, but it was not too dangerous either. Seeing this, Lin Sun relaxed from his tense state. He casually sat cross-legged on the ground and began to meditate. This battle was the first time for Lin Sun to use the Forbidden Passing since he became a peerless saint. Different from the past, although it consumed a lot of physical strength, it was not exhausted. Moreover, when he utilized the Forbidden Divine ability, he could easily execute it with a single thought. It wasn't like before, where he had to circulate his full strength to execute it. In addition, Lin Sun was also quite satisfied with the power of the infinite Tao bottle. The most wonderful thing about the bottle was that the accumulated power was enough to release double the power. Even the power of the absolute saint realm was the same. After the broken sword transformed into a life saint weapon, Lin Sun was quite satisfied with its power, which was obviously stronger than the Yuan killer sword. The reason was very simple. Just the combination of the three inherited powers of origin, extremity, and execution made the power of the broken blade far surpass that of other saint treasures. However, the origin killer sword also had a unique use, and that was, the more holy blood it was stained with, the stronger its ferocious aura. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Lin Sun suddenly felt something and opened his eyes. In the sky, the clouds were dispersing rapidly. Under the sky, a graceful figure was bathed in the bright lightning, exuding a holy aura. Lin Sun's eyes widened at once. Because at this time, Zhao Jingxuan's body was snow-white and smooth, and her seductive figure was completely revealed at this moment. Obviously, she had just succeeded in passing the test and was immersed in a kind of enlightenment, so she didn't notice it at all. As a result, Lin Sun also saw such a soul-stirring scene. Lin Sun's heart beat violently, and a strange emotion rippled in his heart lake, as if he had been electrocuted. Zhao Jingxian was very beautiful. Her beauty was like a delicate and refined hibiscus. Her skin was smooth, and her facial features were delicate and clear. She was like a fairy coming out of a painting. But at this time, her perfect body was revealed in the air, which made Lin Sun have a kind of amazing shock. The only thing that made Lin Sun speechless was that Zhao Jingxian was surrounded by sparkling lightning like a rain of light at this time, which made her beauty looming. When Lin Sun couldn't help but want to further appreciate that beauty, he saw an ancient dragon shadow suddenly appear around Zhao Jingxian, which was lifelike and coiled up and down her body. Bursts of low dragon roar surged between heaven and earth, producing a palpitating dragon power. The beauty was like jade, accompanied by the dragon, standing high in the sky like a holy fairy, with a kind of supreme majesty. A real dragon? Lin Sun's mind suddenly became clear, and he showed a strange expression. Did Jing Xian really awaken the talent of the real dragon in her blood after passing the test successfully? Is it beautiful? Suddenly, Zhao Jingxian opened her eyes in the sky and looked at Lin Sun from a distance with a smile on her beautiful white face. As she spoke, she waved her hand, and a jade robe covered her slim and slender body. She stepped in the void and walked towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun said with a blank face, "What's so beautiful about passing the test?" Zhao Jingxian blinked her watery eyes, bit her moist lips and said, "Do you dare to speak with your conscience?" Her temperament had changed. There was a kind of holy aura, and her voice was melodious like the sound of nature. As she spoke, she sat beside Lin Sun casually, supporting her white chin with her elbow, and turned her head to stare at Lin Sun's side face. Lin Sun looked straight ahead and sighed softly. "My conscience tells me that there's really nothing to see in passing the test. You don't know that I just killed the guy who wanted to do something bad to you, and I haven't recovered my strength yet." Just as he finished speaking, he felt a sharp pain at his waist. Zhao Jingxian smiled sweetly and said, "Don't change the topic. You, Lin Mo, are extremely daring. You dare to look but don't dare to admit it?" Lin Sun gasped and knew that he couldn't pretend anymore. He turned his head and stared at Zhao Jingxuan's beautiful face with his eyes shining. "Well, I admit that I am bold, okay?" Zhao Jingxian was stunned. At this moment, she was pulled into Lin Sun's arms and kissed. At this moment, all the clouds in the sky dissipated, and the sky was clear. A quiet and peaceful atmosphere filled the world again. In the distance, Little Silver said excitedly, "I'm rich this time. Jian Qingchen deserves to be one of the 8 skills of green darkness. He has so many good things. Master will be very happy if he knows." "Wait." The demonic butterfly flapped its wings and stopped Little Silver. "What's wrong?" Little Silver raised his eyebrows. The next moment, he was also stunned. Seeing the scene in the distance, he couldn't help but be shocked and almost jumped up. After a long time, he murmured, "Master finally acts like a man. Little Tian, you don't know that since I followed Master to fight, he has never been greedy for women." At that time, Alu and I both wondered if Master didn't like women. "How many years?" Little Tian asked curiously. "Let me think, Master was still a young practitioner in Gang Spirit Realm at that time. It's been almost decades now. He doesn't even have a confidant?" "Of course he does, but Master has never cared about them. Only Miss Zhao can make him care about her." Speaking of this, Little Silver suddenly thought of someone. "No, there is also Miss Xia Solstice." Little Tian sighed faintly, too few. Since ancient times, which peerless figure in the world hasn't been accompanied by many devastatingly beautiful women? Master is so pitiful. Now that you mention it, he's really pitiful. Little Silver sighed. Pitiful? Suddenly, Zhao Jingshuan's melodious and ethereal voice rang out. Little Silver and Little Tian looked up and saw that Zhao Jingxian had come to their side and was looking at them with a smile. The two of them felt goosebumps all over their bodies as they sensed a wave of killing intent assaulting their faces. They shook their heads in unison and smiled in embarrassment. It was just that in their hearts, Little Silver and Little Tian both sighed. In the future, even if their master wanted to find more female confidants, he would have to get past Miss Zhao first. As for Lin Sun, he watched all this with a smile, but his lips hurt a little, which made him grimace. "Master, your mouth is bleeding," Little Silver suddenly yelled. All of a sudden, Lin Sun's smile froze, while Zhao Jingshuan's pretty face blushed and her starry eyes were full of shyness. On the same day, they left the secret realm. It had been 3 months since they left the camp, and there was only about 1 month left before the arrival of the Yuan magnetic secret realm. On the day Lin Sun and the others left, many overmatches from the Dalio realm came to the entrance of the secret realm. Oh no, there was a battle here! A peerless saint's face suddenly changed. Look at the traces left in the field. It's obvious that a great enemy has invaded here. Hurry up! Let's enter the secret realm and see the young master. But when they entered the secret realm and searched for a long time, everyone's face turned livid and gloomy. There was also a shocking battle in this secret realm, and from the remaining aura in the field, it was enough to tell that Jian Qingchen had suffered a terrible blow. It was very likely that he had died. But none of them dared to believe it, and they couldn't accept it. Jian Qingchen was the number 1 of the young generation in the Daluo ancient domain, and also the leader of their camp. If he died, it would be a heavy blow to their camp in the ancient Desolation realm. If that happened, how could they compete with the other realms? No one is allowed to leak this news, or I will exterminate their families. Finally, a well-respected peerless saint took a deep breath and made a decision. Chapter 1582. On this day, the experts of the great overarching ancient region were informed that Jian Qingchen was in seclusion and everything was handed over to Sky Sword Pavilion's elder, Qin Shaoxing. Qin Shaoxing was a renowned peak saint. At the same time, he was Jian Qingchen's most reliable protector. The fact that he was in charge of the Great Firmament Ancient Domains camp didn't cause much of a commotion. However, all the experts who knew the inside story were deeply worried. Perhaps the news could be concealed for a while, but how could it be concealed until the end? Jian Qingchen was one of the Green Abyss 8 Masters, the leader of the young generation in the ancient Desolation realm. Once the news of his death spread, the entire 9-realm battlefield would be shaken. The most terrifying part was that if Jian Qingchen wasn't there, then how would his ancient All-Heaven region compete with the other regions in the future? Investigate. No matter what, we must find out who the murderer is. Qin Shaoxing's face was cold and his eyes were filled with hatred. Jian Qingchen is dead. Do you plan to spread the news? Zhao Jingxian asked casually on the way back to the ancient wasteland world. Lin Sun thought for a while and shook his head. I'm afraid that no one knows it's me who did it. In this case, it's better not to publicize it for the time being. Why is that? Zhao Jingxian couldn't help but ask. You ought to be clearly aware that Jian Qingchen is the leading figure in the ancient All-Heaven Regions camp. His death is sufficient to cause an extremely heavy blow to the ancient All-Heaven Regions camp, and the other regions would probably be extremely happy to see this scene. And to the ancient Wasteland camp, this is similarly great news. It will be immeasurably beneficial to establishing your reputation. Lin Sun said with a smile, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. If the big shots in other realms know that Jian Qingchen was killed by me, how do you think they will react? Zhao Jingxian instantly understood. Jian Qingchen was one of the Green Underworld 8 Absolute. His death was enough to strike fear into the hearts of Kuan Xiaoyu, Zhu Yingkong, Lai Qian, and Qi Wushu. Lin Sun, who killed Jian Qingchen, would be regarded as the most dangerous person by them. Once Lin Sun was targeted by all of them, they might join hands to deal with him by all means. It's not the time for a full-scale war. The ancient Desolation Realm is too weak. With only a few top sages like us, it's hard for us to compete with the other 8 regions. Lin Sun pondered, when the real war breaks out, we can spread the news of Jian Qingchen's death, which will definitely give the enemy an unexpected blow. Zhao Jingxian frowned and said, but the ancient All-Heaven region will probably find out about Jian Qingchen's death very soon. Do you think they will publicize it? Lin Sun asked. Zhao Jingxian was stunned, and then she instantly came to an understanding and said with a smile, if I was an expert of the ancient All-Heaven region, then I would definitely seal off this news at the first possible moment. At the same time, I would find out who the murderer is as soon as possible. In this way, I would at least be able to eliminate the effects of Jian Qingchen's death to the greatest extent. Her smile was like a flower, clear and gorgeous, and her clear eyes were like a pair of dazzling stars. Lin Sun couldn't help but pinch her pretty face and say, smart. Zhao Jingxian spat lightly, and her pretty face blushed. 2 days later. Ancient Desolation Realm, City of Tao Protectors. The golden city wall was like the continuous body of a dragon, and it coiled around the ground. Every brick was clear like glass, and it was suffused with the color of blood. Moreover, one could vaguely see piles of bones inlaid between the brick. 3 kilometers away from the City of Tao Protectors, a group of experts from the northern underworld ancient domain were invited to battle under the leadership of 5 top sages. Is there no one in the ancient Desolation Realm? No one dares to come out and fight? The enemy is at the gate, but all of you only dare to hide. Don't you feel ashamed? Tui. A 2-legged sheep is a 2-legged sheep in the end. How cowardly! Waves of mocking and sarcastic curses resounded through the heavens and the earth. It was a group of monarchs of the longevity tribulation realm, and all of them were fearless and complacent. On the tower of the City of Tao Protectors, Xiaohao had his hands behind his back, and his expression was calm and unmoved. However, many experts from the ancient Desolation Realm nearby were furious and indignant. A month ago, experts from the foreign forces of the 8 regions showed up in groups and wandered around our ancient Desolation Realm unscrupulously. These days they are even more insatiable. They even came to the city to provoke us. It's intolerable. Some people gnashed their teeth. They must have heard that Lin Sun is not in the city. That's why they dare to come and provoke us. Some people frowned and were deeply worried. Lin Sun had been away for several months, and there had been no news from him. Many people could not help but worry that he had encountered an accident in the outside world. Lin Sun besieged a city in the blood demon world all by himself. Now we are surrounded by the foreign enemies of the 8 regions. This is too much. Some people looked gloomy. In fact, everyone knew that the root of the reason was that the foundation of the ancient Desolation Realm was too weak. After Lin Sun left, only Xiaohao and Ruowu, the two peerless saints, were left in the city. In order to protect the experts in the city, the two of them could not go out and fight with the foreign enemies. On the other hand, the enemies from the 8 regions had many peerless sages, and they had come in groups. Obviously, they knew that the ancient Desolation Realm was weak, and they could only rely on the City of Tao protection to protect themselves. That was why they dared to provoke them so fearlessly. The purpose of their provocation is very simple. The Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm will appear in 2 months. As long as they block this city, it's tantamount to sealing off the opportunity for the experts of the ancient Desolation Realm to enter the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm. Xiaohao said in a deep voice, "Of course, they must have found out that Lin Sun is not in the city. That's why they are so confident to provoke us." Pausing for a moment, he continued, "Of course, if we can't take their goading and go out of the city to fight with them, we will fall into their trap. If anything happens to me or Ruowu, they will definitely take advantage of the situation and attack the city in a large scale." Everyone's expressions changed indeterminately. They knew that Xiaohao wasn't lying, but they were rather resentful and displeased to be blocked in front of their gates and provoked repeatedly. The thing that worried them the most was that if they were still trapped in the city when the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm descended, then how could they seek the opportunity to become a saint? In fact, Xiaohao and Ruowu were rather depressed. They were naturally not afraid of fighting them, but they had to consider the safety of all the experts of the ancient Desolation Realm in the City of Tao Protectors. So many days have passed, but Lin Sun still hasn't shown himself. Obviously, the news is true. He's definitely not in the city. Far away from the City of Tao Protectors, an apex saint spoke slowly. At the beginning, they weren't sure when they found out that Lin Sun wasn't in the City of Tao Protectors, so they were extremely vigilant and cautious when they came to provoke him. But after so many days of probing, no matter how they humiliated and provoked him, Lin Sun still hadn't shown himself, and this caused them to gradually relax. In the opinion of all the experts of the 8 territories, the only existence in the ancient Desolation Realm that they had to fear was Lin Sun. Since Lin Sun wasn't here, then it was undoubtedly the best opportunity for them to invade the ancient Desolation Realm. So, during this period of time, the Northern Underworld Ancient Region, Skyfire Ancient Region, Absolute Een Ancient Region, Jili Ancient Region, Eastern Mulberry Ancient Region, and various other territories had dispatched their forces to charge into the ancient Desolation Realm and wreak havoc throughout the ancient Desolation Realm. Just as Xiaohao had guessed, their final objective was to prepare for the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm that would descend in 2 months. Humph. Even if that kid shows himself, how could he possibly stop the experts of our camp from entering the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm by himself? At the bottom of it all, the reason why the army of the 7 territories was completely annihilated last time was that no one expected Lin Sun to be able to set up an extremely terrifying St. Tao restrictive formation. But it's different this time. After the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm descends, there's no way to set up a formation. If Lin Sun dares to show himself, he'll definitely be attacked by all the top sages of the 8 territories. Some of the other top sages nearby sneered. When the news of the annihilation of the allied forces of the 7 territories was mentioned, they were all extremely shocked. But after calming down, they realized that even though Lin Sun's combat strength was extraordinary, the key reason that led to the annihilation of the allied forces of the 7 territories was the St. Tao restrictive formation. It wasn't because Lin Sun's combat strength was strong enough to sweep away 70 top sages. This was also an important reason why the experts of the 8 territories dared to wreak havoc in the ancient Desolation Realm during this period of time. It was also because they were afraid of the St. Tao restrictive formation that they only dared to provoke from afar and didn't dare to attack the city. Bastard! How could you be so arrogant if Lin Sun was here? Suddenly, An angry roar came from the city of Tao Protector. This made the experts of the northern underworld ancient domain burst into laughter. These poor lambs only dared to threaten them with Lin Sun. It's a pity that Lin Sun isn't here. One of the top sages mocked. So what if Lin Sun is here? He can't do anything to us even if we don't enter the city. Another person sneered. It's been several months, but Lin Sun hasn't shown up. Could it be that something has happened to him? There were also people who speculated viciously. For a moment, everyone on the tower of the city of Tao Protector turned livid and gritted their teeth. At this moment, they finally realized that without Lin Sun, they could only hide here and endure the provocation. When Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian returned, they noticed this scene from afar. It seems that the camp of the Ancient Desolation has been very passive during your absence. They've been bullied to the gate by the enemy, but they can only endure it. Zhao Jingxian glanced at Lin Sun and said with a sigh. Along the way, she had learned from Lin Sun about the various things that had happened over the past year. She knew very well that without Lin Sun, the impregnable city of Tao Protector in the distance would not have been built. Now you understand. In the final analysis, the Ancient Desolation camp has too few top sages. At present, they are far from being able to fight against the other territories. But I believe that everything will change when the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm descends. Chapter 1583. The group of Northern Darkstar Ancient Realm experts was led by 5 peerless sages and more than 30 Immortality Tribulation Realm experts. Such a force was only considered a small force among the forces of the other 8 territories. However, for the Ancient Desolation Realm, it was a terrifying force that they could only endure. They did not dare to fight outside the city. Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu were not afraid, but they were worried that once they left the city, the enemy would take advantage of the situation and the consequences would be dire. Therefore, all the experts of the Ancient Desolation Realm were angry and sullen. On the other hand, the group of Northern Darkstar Ancient Domain experts were fearless and unscrupulous. No one dared to accept the challenge even though they were at the city gates. This made them feel indescribably proud and disdainful. Sigh, what a disappointment. When will the Ancient Desolation Realm dare to send someone out to fight? Maybe then we will look up to you. But now, ahihi, I can only say that you are a bunch of trash. A young man shook his head and sighed. Who are you calling trash? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded out. Of course I'm calling the Ancient Desolation Realm. The young man opened his mouth subconsciously, but he suddenly realized what was going on. He became furious and looked over. A handsome man in a white robe had appeared not far away. He looked calm and composed. The young man who was originally angry was stunned, then he burst out laughing. There is really a piece of trash who dares to leave the city. He laughed loudly, revealing an excited expression. He had been provoking them for a long time, but no one dared to accept the challenge. Now that someone had finally stepped out, he was overjoyed. However, the young man did not notice that the 5 peerless sages around him had changed their expressions. You have guts. The young man raised his thumb and said with a smile, Come on, tell me how you want to die. I will satisfy you. His words made the top sages around him twitch their lips uncontrollably. Slap. A chubby old man slapped the young man's cheek and said, Shut up. The young man was stunned. He covered his cheek with his hand and looked confused. Subsequently, he noticed that the expressions of his companions nearby changed drastically and became extremely solemn. Even the 5 peerless saints acted as if they were facing a great enemy, and their auras rumbled. You can't be, a thought flashed through the young man's mind, and he suddenly cried out involuntarily. Lin! Ha ha, brother Lin is back. Look at that guy. How stupid he is. With the cultivation of the longevity tribulation realm, he still dares to let Lin Sun choose a way to die. Is he out of his mind? Thunderous cheers and laughter resounded from the distant city of Tao Protectors. Xiaohao and Ruowu heaved a sigh of relief. Lin Sun finally came back after a few months. At this moment, Xiaohao and others were keenly aware that with Lin Sun's return, everyone had a sense of relief. It seemed that no matter what happened, as long as Lin Sun was there, it didn't matter anymore. The young man seemed as if he was struck by lightning. His face turned ghastly pale, and his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. It's actually this fellow. Didn't he not appear for a few months? Why has he suddenly appeared now? The bodies of the experts from the northern underworld ancient domain stiffened, and they didn't have the arrogance, complacency, and disdain they had before. Even the top sages had a gloomy expression on their faces. Their eyebrows were full of fear, and solemnity. Everyone in the 9 regions battlefield knew about Lin Sun's fierce reputation. Let's go. Almost without any hesitation, the top sages chose to retreat. They waved their sleeves and were about to escape through the void with everyone. Boom! Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and the void nearby suddenly collapsed. The blazing divine light rolled and shook the top sages out of the void. It was just a single blow, but it showed his arrogance. Let me do it. However, just when Lin Sun was about to kill them, he saw Zhao Jingxian suddenly appear. Her purple clothes fluttered, and her black hair fluttered like a fairy. Okay, I'll help you. Seeing this, Lin Sun stepped aside with a smile. Zhao Jingxian had just set foot in the Sage Realm, and he also wanted to see how strong her combat strength would be after awakening the talent of the true dragon bloodline in her body. Boom! The battle broke out without any accident. The sky and earth shook, and the divine light swept across like a tide. Originally, the top sages in the northern underworld ancient region had no confidence to fight against Lin Sun. But when the opponent became Zhao Jingxian, they didn't have so much fear. They couldn't beat Lin Sun, and they couldn't beat a female sage who came out of nowhere. However, as the battle went on, the expressions of the 5 top sages couldn't help but change, and the pressure gradually increased. Like a fairy, Ruowu's body was covered with light rain, and her beautiful face was pure and holy. But when she attacked, the power was like a landslide and a tsunami, extremely terrifying. Faintly, it seemed as if numerous true dragon silhouettes coiled around her body, and they raised their heads and roared with shocking might. Every single strike of theirs possessed a destructive force capable of incinerating mountains, boiling seas, and collapsing all things. It's the talent of the true dragon bloodline, true dragon world. When this supernatural power is cultivated to the extreme, the power can open up a dragon world. Dragons lurk in it, and once the enemy is trapped in it, he will definitely die. Ruowu's eyes were bright, and a trace of amazement flashed between her eyebrows. This kind of supernatural power is similar to the realm of Wei that a sage king can control. I didn't expect that Brother Lin's confidant is a descendant of the true dragon bloodline. As far as I know, the true dragon bloodline is a superior force on the Starry Sky ancient road, and its foundation is far stronger than all the other races in the world. Xiaohao couldn't help but exclaim. The true dragon, like the immortal phoenix, was almost a legendary race, and rarely appeared in the world. But no matter who it was, no one could deny the strength of such a race. As for the other overmatches of the ancient Desolation realm, they were all stunned. Zhao Jingxuan's stepping into the peerless Saint realm surprised them. Now, she could fight against 5 people alone, and the strength she showed made them tremble. Only Lin Sun was relatively calm. He knew very well that Zhao Jingxuan's father was already a well-deserved martial emperor, and her mother was also a quasi-emperor. Now, both of them had followed the golden cicada young man to the ancient path of the starry sky. With such a pair of extremely powerful parents, how could Zhao Jingxuan's foundation and talent be weak? However, Lin Sun could still see that Zhao Jingxian had not completely grasped the power of the Saint Realm, so she had missed many good opportunities to kill the enemies in the battle. This was normal. The Saint Realm and the King Realm were 2 completely different realms. It was already very impressive that Zhao Jingxian could do this. The battle ended without any surprises. 3 peerless saints were killed by Zhao Jingxian, and the remaining 2 were killed by Lin Sun, who had been watching from the side, when they were escaping. As for the Immortality Calamity Realm experts, they were wiped out like ants with a flick of a finger. That night, when Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian returned, they were welcomed by a group of good friends. They gathered together, drank, and chatted happily. During the banquet, Lin Sun also learned about the various things that had happened in the ancient Desolation Realm recently. The last time the Absolute Prison's secret realm descended, the forces of the 8 territories attacked the ancient Desolation Realm and divided up all the opportunities for the peerless saints to become saints. This time, the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm is about to descend. If they still want to prevent the peerless saints from becoming saints like they did last time, then they are gravely mistaken. Lin Sun said indifferently. He had long promised to help the ancient Desolation experts fight for the opportunity to become saint. How could he tolerate the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm being controlled by the foreign enemies of the 8 territories? Brother Lin, do you have any plans for the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm? Laughing at the heavens asked. He Yechen, Yu Jianming, Mi Hengzhen, Yi Move, and the other peerless saints were most concerned about the opportunity to become saints. When the time comes, Brother Xiaohao and Lady Ruowu will guard the City of Path Protectors together, lest the enemies take advantage of the situation when the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm descends. Lin Sun said in a low voice, As for the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm, I will personally guard it. No matter what, we must let all the people of the ancient Desolation who are qualified to fight for the opportunity to become saints enter the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm. Lin Sun's words lifted everyone's spirit. But Xiaohao frowned and said, After the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm descends, the foreign enemies of the 8 territories will definitely send out a large number of saints. It will be too dangerous for you to go alone. And me? Zhao Jingxian said with a smile. But you and him added together, in the end there are only 2 people. Ruo Wu couldn't help but say, You know, this time there won't be much time for Brother Lin to set up the formation. If you are besieged by the enemies. Before she could finish, Lin Sun interrupted with a smile. Since I dared to do this, I naturally have my considerations. Besides, even if it is dangerous, I can't miss the opportunity to enter the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm this time. His words were calm, but everyone present was moved, their hearts moved. The reason why Lin Sun insisted on doing this despite knowing the danger was that he was thinking for the peerless saints of the ancient Desolation Realm and the entire ancient Desolation Realm, who wouldn't be moved by such breadth of mind, courage, and sacrifice. Only Zhao Jingxian was very calm. Even Jian Qingchen was killed by Lin Sun. Ordinary peerless saints were no longer in Lin Sun's eyes. In the next few days, the foreign enemies of the 8 territories learned about Lin Sun's return to the City of Dao Protectors in the ancient Desolation Realm. For a time, the number of enemies who came to the City of Dao Protectors to provoke them decreased significantly. Of course, there were also some experts who didn't believe it and wanted to find out more about Lin Sun. In the end, they were all killed outside the city without exception. However, with the passage of time, the ancient wasteland world had already become a stormy land. Batch after batch of experts from the 8 regions came one after another. Even the Blood Demon Ancient Realm sent out a group of elite forces under Xueqingyi's instruction. Their purpose was very simple. They came for the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm that was about to descend. Lin Sun saw these changes, but he didn't take any fierce counterattack. He stayed in the City of Dao Protectors and watched the situation unfold. When the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm descended, it would be the day he attacked. Chapter 1584. Blood Demon Realm. Victory Tower, 9th Floor Hall. Although Lin Sun has a fierce reputation, in my opinion, he is just a clown. How can he be qualified for me to deal with him personally? A letter written by Zhu Inkong, the leader of the ancient En territory, was presented before Shwechingi. Every single one of those words were written with vigorous strokes, and it was merely a single sentence, yet it carried a feeling of disdain, arrogance, and pride that assaulted the face. Whoosh! A while later, Shwechingi rubbed his hands together and crushed the letter into powder. His expression was gloomy as he cursed in a low voice, "You, Zhu Inkong, will regret this sooner or later." He took a deep breath and opened the second letter. "I am at the critical juncture of breaking through to the next realm. Forgive me for not being able to personally head to the ancient wasteland world. I hope Brother Shwe is magnanimous enough to forgive me. However, in my opinion, if Lin Sun dares to obstruct our action of entering the magnetic secret realm, he is doomed to be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Brother Shwe, you don't have to worry too much." This was the reply from Kuan Xiaoyu, the leader of the Northern Darkstar Ancient Territory camp. Whoosh! This reply was also torn apart by Shwechingi. Shwechingi's face darkened. At the end of the day, Kuan Xiaoyu didn't take Lin Sun seriously and wasn't willing to join forces with him to kill Lin Sun. Jian Qingchen is in seclusion, Zhu Inkong is too proud of his identity to join hands with Lin, and Kuan Xiaoyu doesn't care about Lin Sun at all. Shwechingi frowned and pondered. Not long ago, he wrote a letter in person, intending to unite the leaders of other realms and kill Lin Sun by taking advantage of the advent of the magnetic secret realm. Moreover, in the letter, he carefully analyzed some of Lin's deeds and specially pointed out that Lin was unusual. If he didn't seize this opportunity, it would be difficult to kill him in the future. With Lin Sun's existence, once the strongmen of the ancient wasteland world entered the Yuan magnetic secret realm to fight for the opportunity to become a saint, there would inevitably be more saints in the camp of the ancient wasteland realm. This was bound to be disadvantageous to the forces of the 8 regions. Originally, Shwechingi had thought that as long as the leaders of the other realms weren't stupid, they would definitely take this matter seriously after reading her letter. Who would have thought that their reply would be like this? This caused Shwechingi to feel depressed. If Lin Sun was so easy to deal with, how could he kill the Blood Demon world alone? How could he kill the 7-territory coalition army alone? However, regardless of whether it was Zhu Inkong or Kuan Xiaoyu, both of them refused to join hands to kill Lin Sun at this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How stupid was this? Shwechingi also knew that Zhu Inkong and the others were not idiot. On the contrary, each of them was smarter than the last. Otherwise, they would not have been able to become the leaders of their respective territories. However, they obviously didn't take Lin Sun seriously. Young Master, Qi Wushu from the Jili ancient region has replied. An old man hurriedly entered the hall and presented a letter with both hands. Shwechingi opened it and her eyes widened. She was so angry that she almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The letter read, "You, Shwechingi, are so ridiculous. You want us to join hands to deal with Lin Sun. Don't you feel ashamed? Or have you been scared out of your wits by what Lin Sun did in the Blood Demon realm last time?" Between the lines, there was a sense of contempt and mockery. It made Shwechingi gnash her teeth in anger. She wanted to fight Qi Wushu to the death. Refusing to join hands was one thing, but why did she have to humiliate him? Did she really think that Shwechingi was easy to talk to? It was only after a while that Shwechingi controlled her anger. It was also at this moment that she noticed that the old man beside her wanted to say something. "What's wrong?" "Just say it," Shwechingi said with a frown. "Young Master, Lai Qian from the Heaven Fire Ancient Region sent someone to deliver a message." The old man looked hesitant. Shwechingi's face darkened. "This guy can't even be bothered to write a letter? Tell me, what is the message he wants me to deliver?" The old man gritted his teeth and said, "I'm not free." Shwechingi was stunned and almost couldn't believe her ears. Not free? Just these 2 words? The old man nodded with difficulty with a bitter smile. Shwechingi felt blood rush to his head. His face darkened and he was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. not free. These two words were filled with undisguised disdain and disdain. Good, good, good. Just based on what Lai Qian said, when the Heaven Fire Ancient Regions camp is in trouble in the future, don't even think about getting the slightest bit of help from me. Xue Qingyi was so angry that he slammed the table and stood up. Jian Qingchen was in seclusion and Kuan Xiaoyu, Zhu Yingkong, Qi Wushu, and Lai Qian had all rejected him. This made Xue Qingyi feel flustered and exasperated. Isn't the defeat of the Seven Territories Coalition army enough to teach them a lesson? They all think that I'm too cowardly and that I've been scared out of my wits by Lin Sun. But they never thought that an opponent that I, Xue Qingyi, value so highly can't be an insignificant person. Fools! A bunch of arrogant and conceited idiots! Xue Qingyi's roar resounded in the hall. He really couldn't control the anger in his heart. Lin Sun was bound to go to the Yuan magnetic secret realm when it descended. In order to protect the experts of the ancient desolation camp and obtain a chance to become a saint, he was destined to be unable to hide. This was undoubtedly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to kill Lin Sun. But now Xue Qingyi felt very sad. Once he missed such an excellent opportunity, it was destined to be even more difficult to kill Lin Sun in the future. If he wanted to achieve his goal of occupying the ancient desolation first, he would also encounter great obstacles. Because at that time, the incomparably weak ancient desolation camp was bound to have a large number of peerless saints. It's a pity that they can't see through him. That's right, none of them have experienced the bloody battle of being killed in front of the city of Tao protectors. Of course they don't know how difficult and troublesome an enemy Lin Sun is. After a long time, Xue Qingyi let out a long sigh. On that day, Xue Qingyi finally received two pieces of good news. One was that the leader of the Star Fiend Ancient Region, Shi Pohei, had agreed to go to the Yuan magnetic secret realm when it descended. The other was the leader of the East Mulberry Ancient Region, Hua Hongxiao. He had also agreed to join forces with Xue Qingyi. This made Xue Qingyi feel a little more at ease. In his original prediction, he didn't think that all the leaders of the 8 territories would agree. However, in the end, only the leaders of 2 territories agreed. These bastards, refusing to join forces is tantamount to sitting on top of the mountain and watching the tigers fight. I, Xue Qingyi, will be the one risking my life. How detestable! When Xue Qingyi thought that he had to deal with Lin Sun in person after all, he felt depressed. But he could no longer refuse. If he didn't act now, it would be very difficult for him to find such an excellent opportunity to take revenge for the Blood Demon Ancient Region in the future. The addition of Shi Pohei and Hua Hongxiao gave Xue Qingyi a lot more assurance and confidence. This time, although those guys won't make a move, they will definitely send a large number of peerless saints from their camp. This will make things easier. When Lin Sun appears, he will definitely become the target of public criticism and be besieged from all sides. Xue Qingyi took a deep breath and calmed down completely. Only then did he ponder, when that time comes, Shi Pohei, Hua Hongxiao, and I will attack together. Killing Lin Sun will be as easy as flipping a hand. The time for the descent of the Source Magnetic Secret Realm was getting closer and closer. The foreign enemies of the 8 territories could be seen almost everywhere in the ancient wasteland world. They came and went in groups, looking menacing and waiting. Due to the large number of forces, they weren't afraid at all, even though they knew that Lin Sun was in the city of Path Protectors. If it wasn't for the opportunity in the Source Magnetic Secret Realm, they would even want to try and see if the city of Path Protectors could withstand their attack. After all, the 7 Territories Coalition army had suffered a crushing defeat last time, which made them lose face. Although it wasn't a serious blow, it was still a considerable loss. This made the experts of the major territories feel suffocated. Since ancient times, they had always had an innate sense of superiority when facing the experts of the ancient wasteland. They had regarded the experts of the ancient wasteland as 2-legged sheep, looking down on and humiliating them to the extreme. But the Seven Territories coalition army had actually been defeated by the camp of the ancient wasteland, which they despised the most. This made them feel very uncomfortable. Recently, the experts of the ancient wasteland camp had been dormant in the city of Path Protectors and hadn't gone out. But everyone could feel that as the arrival of the Source Magnetic Secret Realm was getting closer and closer, the atmosphere in the ancient wasteland world was becoming more and more turbulent and oppressive. On this day, in the sky above the ancient wasteland world, muffled explosions that sounded like they were collapsing and shattering suddenly resounded. After that, rays of divine light descended from the sky, transforming into strands of the power of laws and order. They interweaved together and scattered a magnificent rain of light, causing the world to be suffused with a divine and boundless world energy. The Source Magnetic Secret Realm will descend at this moment. At this moment, the experts of the major territories distributed in different areas of the ancient wasteland world were all alarmed, showing a fanatical and excited look. Hurry up, the door of the secret realm will appear in the easternmost area. That's the Black Cliff Sea. Let's go. For a time, the experts of the major territories all set out and roared in the same direction. The Source Magnetic Secret Realm contained the opportunity to become a saint. Which expert of the 9 territories didn't care about it and was determined to get it? On the wall of the city of Path Protectors, Lin Sun stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His dark eyes were deep as he looked into the distance, his clothes fluttering in the wind. Behind him, Xiaohao, Ruowu, and other experts were all there. And those who were qualified to become saints, such as Silver, Tian, Laughing at the Heavens, Yechen, Mi Hengzhen, Yu Jiaming, and Ji Xingyao, had been taken into the Great Way Bottomless Tower by Lin Sun. You too, I'll leave the city of Path Protectors to you. No matter what happens, don't leave the city rashly. Lin Sun turned around and said solemnly. Don't worry, Brother Lin. Xiaohao and Ruowu nodded in unison. Lin Sun's eyes swept across the crowd and finally fell on Zhao Jingxian beside him. Suddenly, a surge of pride surged in his heart. He smiled and said, Let's see how long the heads of the saints are. Everyone, let's see how good I am. Before his sonorous and heroic voice had died away, Lin Sun had already stepped into the void with Zhao Jingxian and left. Chapter 1585. Black Cliff Sea. It was located in the easternmost area of the ancient wasteland world. The vast sea was as black as the eternal night. Storms raged all year round, and the waves were like black dragons soaring into the sky. It was a spectacular sight. At this time, countless cultivators gathered from all directions. On the shore of the Black Cliff Sea, experts from the various forces of the 8 regions crowded the area like a tide. In the depths of the Black Cliff Sea, the laws of heaven and earth crisscrossed and sprinkled light rain, forming a portal to the secret realm. Undoubtedly, the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm would soon descend on the Black Cliff Sea. Haha, I wonder if the 2-legged sheep of the ancient wasteland will come. Last time when the Ju Yu Secret Realm descended, the ancient wasteland overconfident bastards were utterly defeated. How would they have the guts to come after such a terrible lesson? Don't forget, we've been traveling in the ancient wasteland world these days, and no one from the ancient wasteland dares to come out of the city to fight. Even Lin Sun has become a coward. Countless cultivators were talking. If one looked carefully, one would notice that their figures were densely packed together, and they filled the entire nearby shore. However, one could still clearly distinguish that they were divided into 8 groups. Speaking of Lin Sun, he's really rare. How could a poor and weak place like the ancient wasteland give birth to such a powerful figure like him? Someone was puzzled. Who knows? This guy once suppressed a city and destroyed the coalition army of the 7 regions. His combat strength is indeed terrifying. Many people were worried. Lin Sun's reputation was well-deserved. Over the past year, he had first caused havoc in the blood demon world, then resisted the invasion of the coalition army of the Seven Regions, and finally miraculously rebuilt a Tao Protector city for the ancient wasteland world. Such an expert could be said to be world-shocking and rare even in the 8 regions, so it naturally drew the attention of others. Humph, he's just one person after all. Last time, he defeated the coalition army of the 7 regions by relying on a formation. Someone sneered. That's right. During this time, all the experts of the 8 regions have gathered here. Why doesn't Lin Sun dare to jump out and fight back? He's obviously afraid. Look. As they conversed, all the experts present were alarmed by a wave of terrifying aura. Soon after, streams of sacred auras whistled over from afar. They were densely packed like magnificent rays of light descending into the world. 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, there are more than 800 true sages, and there are more than 100 peerless sages. Many exclamations of shock sounded out, and all of them were astounded. It's just to enter the Yuan magnetic secret realm. Why is there a need to mobilize so many saints? Some people were puzzled. You don't understand. A group of saints gathered here not just to protect us in the magnetic secret realm, but to kill Lin Sun. Someone said excitedly. There are more than 800 true sages and more than 100 peerless sages. Even if a great sage were to come, he would have to give way to them. If Lin Sun dares to appear, it would be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He will definitely die. In the face of the grand scene of the saints gathering, countless strongmen felt suffocated and amazed. Even those who were afraid of Lin Sun were swept away when they saw such a magnificent lineup. I just don't know if Lin Sun dares to come. Someone murmured. From time to time, there were fluctuations in the void in the sky, reflecting the sacred atmosphere. Every ray of light represented the arrival of a saint. In the end, the area within a radius of 1,000 miles was covered by the sacred atmosphere. Strange lights and colors fluttered, and the atmosphere was solemn. How could we see such a shocking scene in the outside world? All the strongmen of the 8 regions were filled with excitement and pride. They firmly believed that any peerless sage would be torn to pieces if they came. At the same time, in the depths of the Black Cliff Sea, a magnificent hall formed by a holy treasure emerged on the surface of the sea. The main hall was engraved with dense dragon and phoenix patterns. In the hall, dozens of peerless sages were either sitting or standing. They were either covered with dense sword intent, golden clouds, or green flames. Each of them was like a legendary god, majestic as the sea. In particular, the aura of the 3 leaders was the brightest, shining like the sun and the moon. They were Xueqingyi, Hua Hongxiao, and Shi Pohe. Ai Xue, thank you all for coming to help. On the main seat, Xueqingyi stood up and cupped his hands to the surrounding people. He looked young and handsome, but every move he made had the momentum to swallow the world. Brother Xue, you don't have to be so polite. We are also curious about what that guy named Lin Sun is capable of. Shi Pohe opened his mouth, his voice rumbling like thunder, shaking the hall. He was the leader of the younger generation of the Star Fiend ancient region. His facial features were rough, his eyes were sparse, and his body was strong. He sat there like a dragon or a tiger. At the other side, Hua Hongxiao wore a black robe and sat silently by himself while drinking wine by himself. He had a head of dark blue long hair, skin that was white like jade, and his handsome features were filled with a proud and aloof aura. We are only worried that the thief Lin Sun will realize the danger and not dare to come. Haha, that's right. Everyone in the hall laughed. Hundreds of sages and more than 800 true sages gathered here. This kind of power was enough to threaten the safety of any territory, let alone Lin Sun alone. Not to mention, there were 3 peerless figures in the 8 skills of green darkness, Xueqingyi, Shi Pohe, and Hua Hongxiao. Everyone, Lin Sun is extremely fierce and cruel. Don't be too careless. Xueqingyi said and walked out of the hall. Everyone, please follow me. Outside the hall, the sea as black as the eternal night was tumbling. In the distance, many experts belonging to the 8 territories gathered near the coast. Shwechingi waved his sleeve, and 24 dazzling, fist-sized pearls rose into the air and swept out in all directions. Every single pearl was branded with dense talisman diagrams of the Tao, and they quickly transformed into an enormous Saint Tao restriction formation that enveloped this expanse of the heavens and the earth while emanating a divine aura that illuminated the sky. "These are 24 ocean saint pearls?" Shirpohe was surprised. "That's right. This set of pearls can form the sacred formation of heaven-suppressing and stabilizing seas. Later, we can let the experts of the 8 regions enter the formation to watch the battle, so that they won't be affected during the battle and delay the opportunity to enter the Yuan magnetic secret realm," Shwechingi said with a smile. Everyone nodded. There was one more thing that Shwechingi didn't say. If something unexpected happened, this formation would be equivalent to having a backup plan. Of course, he couldn't say it out loud. Once he said it, it would make him seem too timid and cautious, which would inevitably cause a lot of laughter. Not long after, under the gathering of the sages, the experts of the 8 territories near the coast were arranged to enter the ocean stabilizing formation. In the field, there were only hundreds of sages and a group of old monsters at the true sage level, which made the atmosphere in this area oppressive and murderous. Seeing this, Shwechingi became more confident and no longer worried. He turned his head and saw that the entrance to the magnetic secret realm, which was hidden by the formation, would soon be completely revealed. Shirpohe was talking to someone next to him calmly and cheerfully. Hua Hongxiao's expression was cold and aloof. He drank by himself, and his eyes were like 10,000 years of ice, which made no one dare to approach him. Lin Sun wouldn't be so scared that he doesn't dare to come, would he? One of the sages frowned and became impatient. At this moment there was a sudden exclamation. "Look over there! That kid really came. He's got guts!" Under the envelopment of everyone's divine sense, they saw 2 figures standing side by side in the extreme distance. It was a man and a woman, and they seemed as if they were taking an idle stroll in their own courtyard as they stood in midair. The man was handsome and extraordinary like an immortal, the woman was beautiful like a painting, and her clothes fluttered in the wind. It really was him. In an instant, Shwechingi and the others all fixed their eyes on Lin Sun. As for Zhao Jingxian, she was ignored. As far as they knew, Lin Sun was the only one worth paying attention to in the entire camp of the ancient desolation. However, Shwechingi and the others didn't expect that Lin Sun would come with only one person, and that he was so fearless. On the shore of the Black Cliff Sea, Lin Sun stopped and said to Zhao Jingxian in a low voice, "Jingxian, you stay here and watch the battle." Zhao Jingxian nodded and floated down to the ground, and then her beautiful eyes swept the surroundings as she said, "Looks like they didn't come for the origin magnetic secret realm, and they've set up such a great force to kill you. If you're unable to endure it, then don't try to show off." Lin Sun touched his nose and said with a smile, "The biggest taboo for a man is to be looked down upon by his own woman. Just watch." Zhao Jingxian grinned, "Okay." As the 2 of them conversed, they treated everyone present as if they were nothing. Their relaxed manner caused many peak saints' faces to darken. What a shameless couple! Even at death's door, they're still flirting with each other shamelessly. Are they tired of living? Someone shouted, his voice shaking the world. The sages hiding in the formation were also shocked. It was the first time for most of them to see Lin Sun. They didn't expect that this guy was even more arrogant and insolent than the rumors said. "Lin Sun, if you leave now, you might have a chance to live. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape this time," Shwechingi said slowly with his hands behind his back. Although he said so, he was sure that Lin Sun would never leave. At that time, this guy dared to make a mess in the blood demon world just for some insignificant companions. This time, it was related to the opportunity to become a sage. How could Lin Sun give it up? As expected, Lin Sun, who was in the distance, suddenly sneered and said, "This is the ancient desolation world. How dare you come here uninvited, and try to take the opportunity of the ancient desolation realm? Do you really think I, Lin Sun, don't dare to kill you?" Every word he spat out was like a thunderclap. The world trembled, and the seawater in all directions rolled and rolled up thousands of waves. The sound wave, which seemed to be real, even blasted on the formation. It immediately stirred up the Taoist patterns of the formation. Rays of light flowed and shone brilliantly, blocking and dissolving the sound wave. But even so, the experts of the 8 regions who were hiding in the formation all sucked in a cold breath, their expressions changing. Lin Sun was indeed as fierce and powerful as the rumors said. Chapter 1586. A voice shocked the whole world. Although Lin Sun was facing a group of enemies alone, his arrogant and domineering attitude had already caused a disturbance in the field. "Humph! What do you mean by taking a share of the ancient desolation? How arrogant!" A sneer sounded. Even Shi Pohei felt very surprised. How could Lin Sun still be so arrogant at this moment? "Who do you think you are? How dare you bark in front of me?" Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. Everyone present was stunned. Shi Pohei, the number 1 of the young generation in the star-fiend ancient region and one of the 8 greats of green darkness, was reprimanded for barking? This was directly calling Shi Pohei a dog. All of a sudden, the faces of the top sages from the star-fiend ancient region darkened. Shi Pohei was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at Lin Sun and said coldly, "Today, if you are willing to surrender, kneel on the ground and repent, I can give you a quick death. Otherwise, I promise I will make you suffer a fate worse than death." "Do you also have the same opinion?" Lin Sun glanced around. "Do you still think you can escape today?" Xueqingyi's expression was cold, and his scarlet eyes were full of divine light. "Lin Sun, you came for the Yuan magnetic secret realm, and we came to kill you. Of course, we won't stop until one of us is dead." He emphasized the words, "won't stop until one of us is dead," with overflowing killing intent. The eyes of the top sages from the 8 regions were full of killing intent. The moment Lin Sun arrived, they had already regarded him as a fish on the chopping block. With Xueqingyi's resolute attitude, they were also eager to have a try. It was said that Xueqingyi was powerful and cruel, but today, he would die without a doubt. "Are you done?" Lin Sun suddenly smiled, and his eyes were cold. "Then I might as well say that if anyone from the 8 regions can enter the Yuan magnetic secret realm today, I will admit my defeat." As soon as he said this, the whole place was silent. Everyone looked at him in disbelief, as if they were looking at a madman. Facing hundreds of top sages and more than 800 true saints, Lin Sun dared to be so arrogant. If he wasn't crazy, then what was? Even the strong people hiding in the formation of the 8 regions were speechless. "Ha ha ha, interesting. I didn't expect the ancient desolation realm to have such an ignorant and fearless fanatic like you. Don't you know how to spell the word death?" Shi Pohei laughed heartily. His entire body was suffused with silver-colored baleful star divine mist that was thick like a waterfall, and he soared into the sky like the overlord that controlled a river of stars. "Such a madman, just kill him." Hua Hongxiao, who had a cold expression and had been silent since the beginning, seemed to be unable to continue watching, and he spoke in an icy cold voice that was like the edge of an icy cold blade that emitted a frightening killing intent. All of a sudden, the whole crowd started to sneer. It was indeed ridiculous and funny. A young man who had become a saint in the ancient desolation realm might have extraordinary fighting power. But saying such words at a time like this was simply too laughable. The Yuan magnetic mystic realm in the distance would definitely descend upon the world in less than an incense stick's time. Did he think that he could reverse the situation in this incense stick's time? This was simply arrogance to the point of insanity. Zhao Jingxian sighed softly in his heart and thought of the past scenes. It seemed that every time someone thought that Lin Sun couldn't do it and regarded him as arrogant. But in the end, without exception, all of them were slapped in the face. Would there be an accident this time? Zhao Jingxian looked up at Lin Sun's figure standing in the void, but he didn't worry too much. In fact, this was already a clear answer. So what if there were thousands of troops in front of him? How could anyone resist his sharpness? Clang! At this moment, with a clear and passionate sound, the Scarlet Yuan Killer Sword, which was like a surging Styx river, rose into the air and dyed the sky red. Who is ignorant and who is arrogant? We'll know after the battle. Lin Sun's clothes and long hair were fluttering, and his eyes were cold. His voice resounded through the sky and stirred up the wind and clouds. Let me try this madman's ability. Suddenly, a peerless saint couldn't help rushing out. This man was tall, with gray hair and eyes like copper bells. He rushed over with a black spear in his hand. Boom! As he swept out with his spear, countless black thunderbolts emerged, and the terrible aura of the divine Tao was steaming like flames. As soon as he attacked, the void was full of crackling thunder and lightning, which was terrifying. Many people were amazed and recognized that this was a peerless saint of the older generation. His Dharma name was Song Ran, and he had been famous for thousands of years. Both his foundation and fighting means were extremely sophisticated. Just like this blow, it was irresistible and accompanied by the power of the Great Way. As soon as it was launched, it had already approached Lin Sun, showing the demeanor of a peerless saint of the older generation. Seeing that this spear was about to pierce through Lin Sun and lift his body into the air, Song Ran couldn't help but feel proud. This blow was his proudest killing move in his life, and he almost used all his strength. If Lin Sun thought that this was a contemptuous and negligent blow, he was wrong. The next moment, a smile appeared on his face. Lin Sun didn't dodge. He just raised his hand and pointed out gently. His fingertip, which was full of divine brilliance, collided with the dark tip of the spear. Ha ha ha, little bastard, you are too arrogant. How can this blow be so easy to take? Song Ran laughed. His black spear was imprinted with the most powerful and domineering heavenly fire of black flame. Even a peerless saint of body refining dared not take its edge, otherwise his body would be burned in an instant. Rumble! Sure enough, with the deafening thunder, the dazzling thunder and lightning arc mixed with the pitch-black heavenly fire of black flame spread along Lin Sun's fingertip to his arm. But with the golden light flowing around Lin Sun's body, the power of the Great Way filled with annihilation instantly engulfed and annihilated the thunder, lightning arc, and heavenly fire. Song Ran's smile suddenly froze. This, boom. At the same time, Lin Sun's fingertip against the black spear suddenly burst into bright and blazing light. Suddenly, Song Ran seemed to be hit by a mountain. The black spear in his palm suddenly bent, and the air burst into pieces with a bang, and the light rain burst into pieces, destroying a saint treasure with a single finger. And this finger pressed on Song Ran's chest. The protective power around Song Ran's body and the defensive treasures covering his body all burst into pieces in an instant, just like a piece of paper. Boom! In the next moment, Song Ran's body was sent flying thousands of feet away. Even the air around him collapsed. When he finally fell to the ground, blood spurted from his nose and mouth. His chest had caved in, revealing a bloody hole. You! Song Ran looked shocked. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but his body suddenly twitched because of the sharp pain. What? The pupils of all the people present shrank at the same time. The confrontation ended in the blink of an eye. Many people were still amazed by Song Ran's shrewdness and strength. Who would have thought that Song Ran would be defeated in the blink of an eye? And he was seriously injured. For a moment, there was a strange silence in the field. They were all shocked by this scene, and they couldn't figure out how Lin Sun did it. Even Xueqingyi, Hua Hongxiao, and Shi Pohe frowned and narrowed their eyes. Sure enough, although this guy was arrogant, he had the capital to be arrogant. Even a peerless saint like Tsang Ran was no match for him. How dare you say I'm arrogant with such little ability? Don't you think it's ridiculous? Lin Sun sneered. From beginning to end, he didn't move an inch. All of you go together, Xue Qingyi ordered with a gloomy face. Whether it was him, Shi Pohei or Hua Hongxiao, it was the first time they saw Lin Sun. They only knew about Lin Sun's battle achievements from rumors. No one knew how strong Lin Sun was. Therefore, they didn't attack with all their strength right away, and wanted to further test Lin Sun's ability. Immediately, 10 peerless saints walked out. There were men and women, old and young, and each of them had a powerful aura. But Xue Qingyi's heart skipped a beat. He remembered that Lin Sun could kill more than 10 peerless saints in front of the city of Dao Protector in the Blood Demon realm. Even if they sent out 10 people now, it wouldn't be enough. Send 10 more, no, 20 more. Xue Qingyi took a deep breath and ordered. This shocked many saints of the 8 territories. What did this mean? Did Xue Qingyi think that they needed to send out 30 peerless saints to deal with Lin Sun? Brother Xue, aren't you overestimating this kid? Shi Pohei couldn't help but frown. He thought that Xue Qingyi's actions were a bit embarrassing. If word got out, he would become a joke. Believe me, if we really want to force this guy to use his full strength, we have to do this. Xue Qingyi took a deep breath, a divine light swirling in her eyes. Don't forget how he swaggered around in the Blood Demon World's camp. His words made everyone's eyes flash. Lin Sun couldn't help but look at Xue Qingyi in the distance with some surprise. When the 7 territories' allied forces attacked the ancient wasteland realm, only the Blood Demon ancient region didn't participate. At that time, Lin Sun had thought that Xue Qingyi was a smart person. From the looks of it now, Xue Qingyi was indeed not someone ordinary people could compare to. At least, it was rare for him to be able to maintain such a cautious and vigilant state of mind when they had the absolute advantage in numbers. One should know that the more powerful a person was, the more arrogant they were. Perhaps they didn't lack intelligence, but they believed in power. Especially when they had the absolute advantage, there were very few people who could be as cautious as Xue Qingyi. The heavens and earth were oppressive. The 30 peerless saints swarmed out like a fan and surrounded Lin Sun from afar. Every single one of them had an aura that shot through the heavens and pushed their qi to the extreme. As peerless saints who had been through hundreds of battles, they naturally understood the principle of, even a lion uses its full strength to catch a rabbit. At that moment, the heavens and earth were filled with dazzling light. These peerless saints were filled with divine light and held all kinds of saint treasures. They were like a group of gods that had descended to the world, causing the surrounding mountains and rivers to pale in comparison. Seeing this, Zhao Jingxian clenched her fists, but her expression remained calm. If Lin Sun couldn't even handle this confrontation, then there was no need for this battle to continue. In the distance, Xue Qingyi and the others were watching with rapt attention. This battle was enough to find out Lin Sun's strength. If Lin Sun showed any signs of weakness, then what awaited him was an overwhelming destructive blow. The atmosphere was extremely oppressive at that moment. Killing intent filled the world. Chapter 1587. How could 30 peak-level sages move together be an ordinary sight? Between heaven and earth, there was a thick and substantial killing intent raging, emitting all kinds of terrifying sounds of sages. Thousands of miles of mountains and rivers collapsed without a sound or a trace. That kind of aura alone was enough to make a true sage feel desperate. As for those below the saint realm, once they were swept away, they would definitely die. In this oppressive and chilling atmosphere, Lin Sun shook his sleeves and stepped into the void. Clang! The Yuan killer sword, which had been waiting for a long time, emitted a passionate sound, as if it was cheering for the blood of sages, and the fierce killing intent was released. Do you want to test my strength with such a small number of people? With a sneer, Lin Sun had already stepped out. His slender figure was flowing with obscure Taoist light, and his black eyes were cold like a demon. You're courting death. Die, you madman! Kill! With a burst of roars, 30 top sages surrounded Lin Sun in a fan-shaped formation, holding all kinds of holy treasures, and exerted their own Taoism. The world was turned upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. In an instant, Lin Sun was covered by all kinds of attacks. Dong! The first one to attack was an old monk with a dignified appearance and skin as if made of gold and jade. He held a gilt staff and attacked Lin Sun directly. The shadow of Buddha appeared on the staff, which was vast and fierce, shaking the world. On the other side, there were several top sages attacking together. A white-clothed youth's body surged with purple divine flames, transforming into a lifelike violet flame Qilin. It was lifelike, and its divine might overflowed into the heavens. It possessed the power to overturn rivers and seas, and command the mountains and rivers. A Taoist in black had a clear sky bell hanging over his head. There was a figure of Tao Master sitting on the bell, and tens of thousands of white lights drifted from the mouth of the bell. Each white light was condensed from infinite divine Tao law, which was enough to cleanse the universe and kill ghosts and gods. In addition, there was a woman in a bloody dress playing an ancient zither, and a bearded middle-aged man holding a snake spear. This was merely the first wave of attacks that had arrived, yet it was already imposing, covered the heavens and the earth, and was monstrously ferocious. If any other top sages were here, their first thought would be to dodge and not dare to face it. But Lin Sun was an exception. Clang! Instead of retreating, he advanced and charged forward. The Yuan massacre sword in his hand created a bloody sword beam that was thousands of feet long, like a river falling from the 9 heavens. Boom! There was a loud explosion. The blood-red sword aura and the gilded staff clashed. 2 terrifying fluctuations collided, producing a thunderous sound. The old monk felt as if he was facing the impact of the underworld river of purgatory. His gilded staff wailed violently and almost flew out of his hand. It shook him to the point that he had no choice but to retreat, and the qi and blood in his entire body roiled. The old monk was astounded. He cultivated a secret body refinement technique of the Buddhist Tao, and his body was peerless to the point of sainthood. It was extremely tyrannical, but never had he imagined that he would be completely suppressed in the first exchange of blows. With a flick of his fingers, Lin Sun performed the momentary spring and autumn. Before the purple fire Kylin could get close to Lin Sun, it was flicked away by Lin Sun's finger and screamed. However, at the same time, the dark-clothed Taoist's clear sky imperial bell had descended from the sky. A myriad of strands of white light swept out from within the bell, and it was completely condensed from Saint Tao laws. It was crystalline and brilliant like the order of the Grand Tao. In a flash, Lin Sun's body was tied up. Kill! Taking advantage of this opportunity, the woman with the guqin and the bearded middle-aged man with the snake spear attacked Lin Sun from both sides without hesitation. Do you think you can trap me with such tricks? Get lost! Lin Sun's body suddenly glowed with a terrible clear light. His qi and blood surged like an angry dragon coming out of the abyss. With a loud shout, all the power that bound his body collapsed. Boom! In the surging divine light, the descending sky imperial bell, the woman with the guqin and the bearded middle-aged man were knocked back by the power released from Lin Sun's body before they could get close. Exclamations sounded. The clear sky imperial bell swayed and staggered as it flew backward. The woman with the guqin was bleeding from the corner of her mouth, and the bearded middle-aged man was knocked back. Every step he took, the void collapsed, and the qi and blood in his body roiled. He was so uncomfortable that he almost coughed up blood. In this instant, the siege of the old monk, the dark-clothed Taoist, and the young man in white was easily broken. The top sages who came from other directions also narrowed their eyes. Lin Sun could still be so powerful in a head-on confrontation. The horror of Lin Sun was beyond their imagination. But in just a moment, Lin Sun's figure was submerged again, because this time it was not just 5 people who besieged him, but 30 top sages. Boom. For a time, the field was full of light, Taoist magic, holy treasures, and all kinds of amazing phenomena superimposed. The world seemed to sink and collapse at this moment, and a terrible battle was staged. The overmatches of the 8 regions who were hiding in the formation and watching the battle widened their eyes in horror. They couldn't see the specific details of the battle at all, but even so, it was still difficult for them to calm down. There were 30 top sages, and the opponent was a young man who had set foot on the top of the Saint Realm for less than a year. The disparity in the number of sages was incredible and shocking. Zhao Jingxuan's beautiful eyes were fixed on Lin Sun, who was trapped in the field. Her beautiful face was calm and tranquil, but no matter how confident she was in Lin Sun's combat power, she couldn't help but feel nervous. You too, now you can see how fierce this man is, right? In the distance, Xueqingyi's scarlet eyes shone with a terrifying light. Previously, when he sent out 30 top sages to attack together, he was questioned by others, thinking that it was a disgrace to do so. It was no different from destroying his prestige, and it was easy to be ridiculed. But now, who dared to say that? Everything that was happening before him was proof that Xueqingyi's plan was the correct decision. But in fact, he wasn't calm either, because the combat power shown by Lin Sun made him feel threatened and pressured. Lin Sun was much stronger than he had expected. Fortunately, there are hundreds of top sages here, and Shi Pohe and Hua Hongxiao are helping. This time, no matter how fierce Lin Sun is, he can't escape death, Xueqingyi murmured in his heart. This man is really amazing. He has already entered the threshold of creating his own method, and he is not inferior to us in the pursuit of the top sages. Shi Pohe's eyes were like lightning. It was also at this moment that he realized how powerful Lin Sun was, and he didn't dare to underestimate him like before. Even if he was besieged by 30 top sages, it would be hard to say whether he could break out of the encirclement or even survive. The more it is so, the more we should get rid of him. Hua Hongxiao gently spat out a few words, his cold face surging with killing intent. Obviously, he also felt threatened by the power Lin Sun had shown. If the ancient desolation camp had this man, it would be enough to make people restless. Haha, don't worry. For this operation, I have endured for many days and finally set up this trap. Today, he is like a bird in a cage, unable to escape even if he has wings. Xueqingyi said with a light smile, and his eyebrows were full of absolute confidence. If they couldn't kill Lin Sun with 100 top sages and more than 800 true sages, they might as well kill themselves. Rumble on the battlefield, the fighting was fierce and earth-shattering. In the void, the divine flame was like a dragon, the thunder shook the world, the divine rainbow pierced through the sky, and the sword light was blazing. A total of 30 top sages attacked together, and countless forces that could destroy the world gathered together. What a terrible scene it was! The world was shattered, and the void was shaking uneasily, as if it couldn't bear the terrible power. If other top sages were here, they would have been torn into pieces. Even the strong people in the great sage realm might have to avoid the sharp edge. At this moment, Lin Sun also ran the real power all over his body, and fully developed his own Tao and method. All kinds of magical skills poured out from his hand. 9 strikes for shaking heaven. 9 changes of real spirit. Great divination void-breaking finger. Taixian sword chi in the end. A big abyss appeared around Lin Sun, stretching across the sky, as if it was really going to swallow the sky, and the annihilation aura it released filled the world. The void within a radius of thousands of miles was bursting and collapsing. The terrible power, like the Milky Way bursting its dike, turned into a huge storm, and gathered in the big abyss behind Lin Sun. Under the sky, everything twisted and collapsed, reflecting a terrible vision that was enough to make people tremble and despair, as if the end of the world was coming. The other 30 top sages all changed their expressions. They didn't expect that Lin Sun could not only hold on until now, but also seemed to want to reverse the situation and take the initiative. They all used all their means and attacked with all their strength, like angry gods. This made people watching the battle in the distance couldn't help but gasp. In such a situation, Lin Sun could still fight fiercely and wanted to reverse the situation. Lin Sun's toughness and fierceness shocked them. But to their relief, it didn't take long for Lin Sun to finally be injured. Whoosh! A jet of dark sword chi swept across, leaving a bloody wound on Lin Sun's shoulder. Soon, the second, the third, and the fourth wounds appeared one after another. Although the power of body refining and the profound meaning of immortality healed them quickly. But everyone could see that he obviously couldn't resist. After all, it's the siege of 30 top sages. Can he turn the sky upside down? Many spectators were relieved. They all thought that the outcome had been decided, and Lin Sun's death was just a matter of time. Only Zhao Jingxian murmured in her heart, "It's just a small injury. If it can stop him, won't the title of Demon Lin be undeserved?" At this moment, Lin Sun, who was fighting fiercely, suddenly let out a long roar. He pressed his palm and fingers, and the big abyss that appeared behind him rumbled and crushed down. Bang! The void rumbled and broke, and chaos appeared. The horror of this blow was like the sky had turned into a big abyss, engulfing the universe, mountains and rivers, and crushing the earth. The ground in the nearby area suddenly collapsed, as if it couldn't bear the pressure of such a terrible force. Boom! All the Taoist magic that attacked Lin Sun was annihilated like bubbles. All the magical and extraordinary holy treasures were shaken back in a wail. The 30 top sages who were rushing with all their strength felt suffocated, and their bodies trembled violently. They were torn by a terrible force, and their faces changed. The big abyss fell from the sky. The power of this blow was earth-shattering. Chapter 1588. In the sky, Lin Sun carried the abyss on his back and pressed down. His body was blazing and dazzling, giving people a sense of immeasurable and deep majesty. This was the power of star obliteration devouring Wei, and it was also the embodiment of Lin Sun's own combat strength. Back then, Star Obliteration Battle Emperor crossed the starry sky, and wherever he passed, the galaxy would explode and thousands of stars would sink. That kind of power was simply terrifying. Perhaps Lin Sun was still too far away from Star Obliteration Battle Emperor, but in this supreme realm, the power of Star Obliteration devouring Wei, which he used to the extreme, was still powerful enough to make the world terrified. Kill! Let's go together. The 30 supreme sages all sensed that something was wrong, and they urged their own strength to attack with all their might. The gathered power of the divine Tao stirred up the world, and the boiling power storm raged in all directions. But no matter how they attacked, under the pressure of the seemingly boundless and unfathomable abyss, they were all swallowed up and turned into powder. Boom! In the end, with a deafening roar, the 30 supreme sages staggered back as if they had been swept by a storm, and they scattered in all directions. How is this possible? What kind of power is this? There were countless exclamations in the field, and all the spectators were shocked at this moment. Before, when they saw Lin Sun repeatedly injured, they all felt relieved and thought that Lin Sun would definitely die. But how long had it been such a shocking scene happened? How could he be so powerful? Even Xueqingyi, Shi Pohe, and Hua Hongshao were all nervous, and their faces changed slightly. They were a little unprepared. As for the cultivators of the 8 regions hidden in the formation, they were all dumbfounded, and their minds were in a daze. They thought they were hallucinating. 30 supreme sages couldn't subdue Lin Sun? The title of Demon God Lin is not just for show. Zhao Jingshuan's moist lips slightly tilted up. At this time, in the field, Lin Sun had already started killing. Previously, being besieged by 30 supreme sages made him feel restrained. No matter how he moved, it was difficult for him to fully exert his strength, like a fish caught in a net. But now it was different. It was as if he had jumped out of the cage, and there were no more restraints and obstacles. Die. Lin Sun's figure flickered and appeared in front of the old monk out of thin air. The Yuan killer sword slashed out at an incredible speed. The old monk was shocked. He held the gilded Zen staff to resist the attack, but he was alone at this time. How could he withstand such a full-strength attack from Lin Sun? Bang! First, the gilded Buddhist staff was broken into 2 pieces. Then, the old monk's body was torn apart. Even his Saint Realm body, which was said to be indestructible, could not withstand Yuan Tu's attack. "You can't kill me!" the old monk roared. His physical body had become a peerless sage, so he had nothing to fear. But in the next moment, his expression changed drastically. His body that had been torn apart was directly enveloped and swept by the energy of Lin Sun's star-obliteration heaven-devouring Tao, and then it was obliterated inch by inch. When Lin Sun turned around and disappeared, the holy monk, who was also highly respected among Buddhist practitioners, had been killed in both body and soul. And this was the first sage to die in Lin Sun's hands since the war began. For a time, the field was shaken and restless. All of them were shocked and angry. The attack of 30 peerless sages could not suppress one of them, but now one of them was killed. Who could believe it? And the killing had just begun. As soon as he killed the old monk, Lin Sun's figure flickered and rushed out violently. He did not intend to give the other side any chance to join forces. Kill! Stop him! 5 peerless sages moved horizontally and attacked with all their strength. Their power was monstrous, and the light of treasures swept across. Like ants. With a cold voice, Lin Sun took a step forward. From every acupoint of his body, brilliant sword chi swept out like a landslide and a tsunami. The dense strands of sword chi were like an ocean of sword chi that covered the entire sky. As they poured down, the dazzling and resplendent sword lights illuminated the heavens and the earth, and they were boundlessly dazzling. The 5 peerless sages were drowned in it, screaming incessantly. One by one, they were torn to pieces, blood rained, and their souls were torn into powder. And Lin Sun had already rushed to another place. His movement was fast and his killing was fierce. Like a sharp blade, wherever he passed, he was invincible and unstoppable. In the sky, bright red blood was rolling, and the sound of Saint Death began to resound. The strong people watching the battle in the distance became restless. Their faces changed, and they exclaimed. They were stimulated by the bloody scenes that were playing in front of them. This change came so suddenly. Before, Lin Sun was besieged and suppressed, but now he had launched a counterattack with matchless courage. How is this possible? The experts of the 8 regions hidden within the formation were all shocked, their bodies turning cold. On the battlefield, the bearded middle-aged man holding the snake's spear broke through the air with a fierce momentum. Before he arrived, the power bursting out of the snake's spear had already pierced through the air. Humph! Lin Sun raised his fist and punched from a distance. A simple and clear cyan fist force swept out, combining with Lin Sun's own Tao and Dharma. As soon as this punch appeared, it showed a terrible scene of the sky collapsing, the earth cracking, and all things perishing. The bearded middle-aged man's expression changed abruptly. However, right at this moment, 3 peak-level sages made their moves, wanting to stop this attack midway. The clear sky imperial bell suddenly expanded, and a saber with the shadow of a purple fire qilin also burst out. The sound of the zither turned into shadows of goddesses and descended into the void. 3 top saints attacked at the same time. Unfortunately, they still underestimated the power of Lin Sun's punch. Clang! This punch hit the Tao bell first. This was a mysterious and unfathomable holy treasure. It was extremely powerful in both attack and defense, and it was the Taoist in Black's proudest possession. But at this moment, the bell was struck by a punch, and light rain splattered everywhere. The bell's body even caved in, and a clear fist force could be seen. Puff! Treasures and chi were connected. The damage to the bell made the Taoist in black spit out a mouthful of blood, and his face was as pale as paper. But this was only the beginning. Then, the punch hit the saber again, and the shadow of the purple fire Kylan on the blade directly exploded, turning into a rain of light that scattered all over the sky. The young man in white let out a painful groan, and his figure retreated rapidly, on the verge of collapse. And the shadows of goddesses derived from the sound of the zither were like paper. They could not stop the punch, and were broken into pieces by the punch. In the end, the fist force landed on the snake's spear. The bearded middle-aged man gritted his teeth and roared, trying his best to resist it. But Lin Sun's punch was aimed at him, so how could it be so easy to resist? Bang! The snake's spear broke in the middle. The curly-bearded middle-aged man's figure trembled abruptly as if he'd been crushed, and he suddenly retreated over 10 steps. Every single step he took caused the skin on his body to crack open, and after over 10 steps, his entire body was mangled like a man made of blood, causing him to seem savage and terrifying. With one punch, he had defeated 4 peak sages. The fierce power that Lin Sun showed at this moment was like a storm, causing the whole audience to tremble. But for Lin Sun, this punch was just to repel the enemy. His real killing move was the Yuan killer sword that was slashed out at the same time. Puff! Just as the force of the fist dissipated, the blood-red Yuan massacre sword stabbed into the void from another direction. In the next moment, a figure that was silently hidden in the void was pierced through by a sword and raised up into the air. The entire person's chest and stomach were split open, and a rain of blood sprayed down. Another peerless sage had fallen. The spectators in the distance were shocked and angry. Lin Sun, who was under siege, was so fierce as soon as he broke out, which was beyond their expectations. "Let's go together. We can't let him defeat us one by one." Roars resounded in the field. Those top saints seemed to have gone crazy. Lin Sun's killing was straightforward and overbearing, which stimulated them. At the same time, Xueqingyi's face darkened, and his eyes flashed. Even he did not expect that the attack of 30 top saints could not suppress Lin Sun's arrogance. Instead, Lin Sun took advantage of this time to start a massacre. "Even if I fight with him one by one, I'm not sure I can win." Sher Pohei's eyebrows were extremely solemn. At first, he was very disdainful and contemptuous towards Lin Sun. Later on, he began to treat Lin Sun seriously, seeing him as an opponent who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. But now, Sher Pohei did not dare to think like that. To be able to turn the situation around under the attack of 30 top saints, even Sher Pohei might not be able to do it. "We've already tested him to this extent. Shouldn't we make a move?" Hua Hongxiao's eyes were filled with killing intent. Seeing the top saints being killed by Lin Sun one by one, he could not hold back anymore. "Wait." Xueqingyi took a deep breath. The son of a noble family should not sit in a corner. The situation is still under control. There's no need for us to intervene. "Are you going to watch them get killed?" Sher Pohei frowned. He could not bear to watch anymore. "You too, the realms behind us can lose some top saints, but they can't lose us," Xueqingyi said in a low voice. "When the situation is out of control, that's the time for us to make a move." As he spoke, he gave an order to the top saints who had been watching the battle. "All of you, attack together. I'd like to see how long Lin Sun can last." There were more than 60 of these top saints. They immediately accepted the order and rushed into the battlefield. For a moment, the situation suddenly changed. Previously, when 30 peak-level sages attacked at the same time, it was already shocking. Now, there were more than 60 top saints joining in. The lineup was extremely luxurious. With such a huge force gathered together, it was enough to attack an entire realm. But now, their target was only Lin Sun. Anyone who saw this scene would feel despair. As a top saint, no matter how powerful Lin Sun was, how could he break out of the encirclement? Zhao Jingshuan's heart tightened. In this situation, It would be difficult for Lin Sun to find a chance to escape in the distance. Xueqingyi's scarlet eyes were filled with madness and cruelty. He murmured in his heart, "Kill. No matter how serious the casualties are, it's worth it as long as we kill this guy." Chapter 1589. Even Shi Pohe and Hua Hongshao felt their hearts shuddering when they saw the Sacred Realm experts attacking together. As peerless figures of the 8 skills of green darkness, they naturally had no lack of pride and foundation. They were confident that they would be invincible in this realm sooner or later. But if any of them were to face the siege of so many peerless sages, they wouldn't have any confidence to win. "Lin Sun, you can die without regret under such a siege," Shi Pohe said softly. He was not gloating, but really expressing his feelings. Even if Lin Sun died in this battle, when the news about this battle came out, it would make him famous all over the world. It's incredible that such a monster can come out of the ancient Desolation realm. Hua Hongshao also spoke. He was arrogant, but at this time, he had to admit that if there were 9 skills of green darkness, Lin Sun would definitely have a place in one of them, and his ranking would definitely not be low. At this time, all eyes were focused on Lin Sun. The atmosphere was more oppressive than before. Nearly 100 peerless sages attacked one person together. Such a thing was unique even in the previous battles of the 9 regions. The disparity in strength was too great and the formation was too amazing. But in the face of this scene, Lin Sun, who was in the midst of killing, seemed to have expected it. Before he was besieged, he suddenly stepped into the air and stood high under the sky. His figure was tall and aloof like an immortal, but his power was overwhelming like a demon. The 2 different temperaments merged together, outlining a unique and domineering charm. "You think you can do whatever you want with more people? It's futile." Lin Sun's indifferent and cold voice sounded. He waved his sleeves, and with a clatter, hundreds of brilliant holy treasures whistled out. Each of the holy treasures was collected by Lin Sun, including axes, hooks, forks, knives, spears, swords, halberds, seals, bells, tripods, pagodas. There were all kinds of holy treasures, and all of them were full of sacred aura. However, these holy treasures had already been refined by Lin Sun, and dense Taoist patterns were inscribed on them. At this time, the 108 holy treasures whistled out together. In a flash, they were distributed in all directions, emitting dense and magnificent Taoist patterns, and constructed a large formation in the void. Rumble in the blink of an eye, this expanse of the heavens and the earth was covered by boundless mist, and it isolated the outside world from the outside world. It transformed into an extremely miraculous and large-scale trap formation. This formation was known as Heaven Shrouding Sun. "I finally used it," Zhao Jingxian felt relieved. Lin Sun hadn't gone out since he returned to the city of Dao Protector some time ago, and he was regarded as an enemy of the 8 regions. But only she knew how crazy Lin Sun was during that period of time. He almost worked day and night to refine holy treasures and inscribe formations. Almost all the spoils Lin Sun had harvested over the past year had been refined into the base of the formation. These were holy treasures, each of which was priceless. But who would be as crazy as Lin Sun and willing to refine them all? No. And all of this was for this battle. No! Damn it, what kind of formation is this? Why can't I shake it off? A wave of exclamations resounded in the battlefield. The group of saints who were charging forward aggressively were caught off guard, and their bodies were engulfed by the surging mist. They instinctively struggled with all their might, but it was as if they had fallen into a swamp. No matter how hard they tried to resist, it was to no avail. In just a few blinks of an eye, the expanse of the heavens and the earth was covered by the boundless mist. Not to mention the saints, even their voices and auras were completely isolated. Looking from afar, the vast expanse of the heavens and the earth was covered by the mist. Compared to the intense sounds of battle before, it was extremely quiet at this moment. It was extremely strange, and there wasn't even a trace of fluctuation. The most terrifying thing was that some of the true saints who were watching the battle from afar didn't have time to dodge and were swept into the misty formation. Only Zhao Jingxian smiled when she saw this, and she took the initiative to walk into the formation. Her slender figure quickly disappeared. That fellow is borrowing the power of the formation again. Xue Qingyi's face sank. He had expected this, but he hadn't expected that there would be a formation in the world that could instantly trap almost 100 saints. Moreover, how could such a large-scale forbidden array be set up in an instant? He couldn't understand it. What do we do? Shi Pohe frowned. This is a trapping formation. It's as if it's recreating a world. There's no way to attack it, and anyone who touches it will be dragged into it. Hua Hongxiao, who had always been cold and silent, suddenly said, "To break this formation, a Tao pattern grandmaster must take action to see through its mysteries and dismantle it." "Then does Brother Hua have a way to break it?" Xue Qingyi asked. "I'm not a Tao pattern master." Hua Hongxiao shook his head. "If Zhu Yingkong was here, he would definitely be able to do it. His Illumination Dragon bloodline is proficient in the Tao of spiritual runes, and one of his ancestors was an emperor who used spiritual runes to prove his Tao." Shi Pohe frowned. "Brother Xue, you didn't invite Zhu Yingkong to help." Xue Qingyi's face darkened, and his mood became extremely gloomy. "That fellow is in closed-door cultivation and has no time to care about anything else. Almost 100 saints attacking at the same time. What kind of powerful formation was that?" But before they could even fight, they were directly trapped in the formation. This was like being hit by a stick, and Xue Qingyi was so angry that he almost coughed up blood. "Do you guys think that the same mistake as the 7 territories allied army will happen again?" Shi Pohe asked. Xue Qingyi's heart skipped a beat. Last time, 70 saints and 210,000 soldiers of the 7 territories allied army were completely annihilated. That bloody lesson was extremely painful. If such a scene were to happen again today, it would be a devastating blow. "It won't." However, Hua Hongxiao said decisively, "The formation that this kid set up doesn't have a source of power to support it. It won't last long if it only relies on the power of the formation's foundation. As long as those peak sages who are trapped resist together, this formation will definitely collapse in less than 15 minutes. Hearing this, Xue Qingyi and Shi Pohe's expressions relaxed a lot. But when they thought about how they still had to wait for 15 minutes, they couldn't help but feel annoyed. 15 minutes was enough for many unexpected things to happen. No matter how I calculated, I didn't expect this kid to have such means. If I had known earlier, I would have mobilized some experts who were proficient in spiritual tattoos." Xue Qingyi secretly gritted his teeth. Inside the formation, it was a different scene. It was like a world filled with mist. Almost 100 saints and a group of true saints were trapped in different areas. They didn't want to see each other, and their perception and 6 senses were all obstructed. Being in the formation, they were like a leaf of straw lost in a vast ocean. This shocked them, and they were all tense and alert to the extreme. They tried to attack, trying to break a hole in the misty world, but it was to no avail. At this moment, as Lin Sun walked in, all the details of the formation appeared in his mind. This formation was completely different from the 4 extremes and 8 defenses formation in the City of Tao Protectors. It was made up of 108 saint treasures. The source of power of this formation also came from these saint treasures. When the power of these saint treasures was used up, the formation would collapse and disappear on its own. In short, this formation could only be used once, and the price was more than 100 saint treasures. Even Lin Sun had to accumulate more than a year's trophies before he could spend so much money to set up such a large formation. It was a huge price to pay. However, the effect was also amazing. At least in this formation, the enemies had become trapped prey, waiting to be slaughtered. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Lin Sun's figure flashed and he launched an attack. In one area of the array, 3 peak sages gathered together. Suddenly, a sharp blade that looked like a ray of light shot out of the mist. Dodge! They were already tense and vigilant, so they reacted immediately. But the speed of the flowing light was completely beyond their imagination. With a light flash, it broke through the defense of one of them and cut open his chest with irresistible force. Crash! A scarlet rain of blood burst out and the saint was killed. On the other hand, at this moment, the other 2 finally realized that the sharp light was surprisingly a crystalline, brilliant, and extremely illusory broken blade, and the aura that flickered with the sharp light caused their entire bodies to go cold. Let's go! The 2's expressions changed drastically as they teleported into the fog. But on the way ahead, Lin Sun's figure appeared strangely. What was faster than Lin Sun's figure was the blood-red Yuan killer sword. Whoosh! The blade swept across, and the fierce bloody sword Qi directly swept the 2 saints into it. In the blink of an eye, the 2 saints died without any bones left. 3. Lin Sun didn't look at them and turned away. This formation couldn't be maintained for too long, so he had to end the battle quickly. Boom! Soon, in another area, 5 saints were attacked by Lin Sun, and the outcome was decided in just 10 breaths. 2 died under the broken blade, 2 under the Yuan killer sword, and 1 was killed by an arrow of insignificant bow when he was escaping. Compared with the battle when he was besieged by 30 absolute saints at the beginning, Lin Sun killed his opponents like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The reason was very simple. In this formation, Lin Sun had the advantage of taking the initiative to attack, and everything was under his control. Not to mention 1-on-1, even 1-on-5 or 1-on-10, there was no threat to Lin Sun at all. In just a moment, more than 20 saints were killed one by Lin Sun, showing a manner of killing saints as if they were chickens. Occasionally, he would meet some true saints, which was even worse. For Lin Sun, it was no different from cutting melons and vegetables. Even while killing, Lin Sun had the time to take magic medicines and elixirs to replenish the consumed power. It was much easier. In short, in this formation, Lin Sun was the only master, and he had the power to kill. The only drawback might be that this formation couldn't be maintained for too long. Otherwise, Lin Sun even had the confidence to kill as many saints as possible. At the same time, on the Black Cliff Sea, Xueqingyi's face gradually became gloomy. Because the lament of a saint would resound from time to time in the sky, and it allowed them to understand how tragic and horrifying the casualties within the formation were. Chapter 1590. The misty array shrouded the world, silently rolling about in silence. However, the sky was constantly filled with a piercing blood-red color, and the mournful wails of saints falling could be heard. It lasted for a long time. The cultivators of the 8 regions hiding in the formation were stunned. They felt cold as if they had fallen into an ice cave. It couldn't be seen, couldn't be touched, but everyone knew that peak saints were suffering and falling in the misty formation. Fear was written all over everyone's face. Nearly 100 saints and a group of true saints. How could they be slaughtered just like that? What kind of formation was that? Why were saints like grass when trapped inside? That's the 39th. Including those who died in the hands of that guy, there's a total of 56. Sure Pohei's face was livid and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. This time, he had been invited here. Originally, he had scoffed at it and thought that Xueqingyi had set up such a large formation because he had mobilized so many people. But now, he finally understood why Xueqingyi was so cautious. The opponent alone had broken through the encirclement of 30 saints. His combat ability was extraordinary and he had shocking power. This made Sure Pohei's heart palpitate and he felt immense pressure. However, at that moment, the other party was able to trap a group of peerless sages with a formation that he had casually set up. This method was simply unimaginable. Looking at the crimson sky and hearing the Saint Death cry that resounded in the surroundings, Sure Pohei's face turned extremely unsightly. "This is your plan?" Hua Hongxiao's face was cold. He couldn't calm down and questioned. Xueqingyi clenched his fists and took a few deep breaths to suppress the anger and depression in his heart. No one wants to see such a scene. However, the situation isn't too bad. Please take a look. The power of the Grand Formation is decreasing sharply. Xueqingyi pointed into the distance and his voice was filled with hatred. "I promise that when the formation collapses, I will be the first to kill him." He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. This time, he had endured for a long time and planned everything. He thought he could kill Lin Sun with lightning speed. But who would have thought that so many accidents would happen? Inside the great array shrouding the sun, Lin Sun's figure flickered. His expression was cold, and his black eyes were as calm as an ancient well. He was like a dominator patrolling and killing the prey in his territory. Everywhere it passed, sages died. With his current battle prowess and the fact that he was in the formation that he had set up, every time he attacked, he would be able to shake the heavens and earth and destroy everything in his way. No matter how strong your saint treasure is or how amazing your Tao technique is, I will suppress it with my own strength. Ha! A saintly voice filled with unparalleled murderous power rang out. A peerless saint actually turned into a kuei ox and let out a godly roar. The sound wave was like a tide, like thunder falling from the 9 heavens. Just like Zhen Ho and Pu Lao, the divine beast kuei ox was renowned for its ability in the Tao of sound. The kuei ox that had stepped into the peak of the Saint Realm was even capable of shattering mountains and rivers in an area of 4,000 kilometers with a single roar and cause the stars to shake. No matter how loud your voice is, it's all futile. Lin Sun didn't even look at them. He walked forward with his hands behind his back. But when his voice sounded, the profound meaning of Pu Lao's roar was activated. Those characters were like great Tao symbols, brilliant and dazzling as they whistled over. It was as if his words were the law and his words contained the laws of heaven. Boom! The kuei ox's roar was directly broken. Even with the power of the Saint Realm, he couldn't resist such a terrible impact. His body exploded in the air, and both his body and soul were destroyed. It seemed that such scenes were happening constantly in the formation. Some peerless saints were killed by the Yuan killer sword, some were killed by the broken blade, some were killed by the Taishen sword qi, and some were crushed by the great divination finger. Amongst them were seniors that had attained the Tao a long time ago, peerlessly brilliant geniuses of the younger generation, direct line descendants of extraordinary clans, gorgeous celestial fairies that had inherited the inheritance of ancient masters, but without exception, they were all killed by Lin Sun. Shrill screams, unwilling roars, furious and deranged roars, rang out one after another. It was not easy to cultivate, and it was even more difficult to seek the Tao. Those who could reach the peak of the Saint Realm were all lucky people who had gone through many hardships to stand out from the crowd. But when death came, everything was empty, and there was only a pile of dry bones left. At this moment, for those peerless saints who were trapped in the formation, it was extremely torturous. Feelings of despair, helplessness, terror, and panic were like tempestuous waves that struck their hearts and minds, causing their expressions to be gloomy. But soon, someone noticed that the mist that pervaded the surroundings was starting to disperse. Moreover, their perception power was also able to spread out. Ha ha ha, there is always a way out. This formation is going to collapse. Someone laughed wildly. Hold on, you must hold on. Someone shouted. At the same time, Lin Sun suddenly stopped and frowned imperceptibly. The power of this formation was indeed going to be broken. There are 29 people left. In an instant, Lin Sun sensed that the number of the remaining peerless saints had gathered together. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun took out the insignificant bow and the 2 arrows of Bai Lu and Emoli. It's finally going to collapse. Xuechingi's scarlet eyes lit up, and he was in high spirits. This time, I want this man to die. Shi Pohei's face was cold, and his killing intent was surging. Clang. Hua Hongxiao didn't talk nonsense. He took out a simple, narrow, and bright long saber. The blade was engraved with the pattern of a saint weeping blood, which looked extremely ferocious. Before, all three of them were full of hatred and anger, but they could only watch the peerless saints trapped in the formation being killed, which almost drove them crazy. Now it was finally time for them to fight back. Set up the formation. Xuechingi gave the order, and his voice shook the sky. Nearby, there were more than 500 strong practitioners of true sage realm. Hearing this, they all took out an apricot yellow flag and stood in line with each other. In an instant, numerous apricot yellow flags swayed while emanating numerous strands of dazzling sword qi. Every single strand of sword qi revealed a profound and divine aura. A few hundred strands of sword qi flashed up and swiftly converged into a vast sword insight that seemed capable of reaching the heavens. Its glow shot into the sky, shook the stars, and dominated the world. Looking carefully, there seemed to be hundreds of sages in the vast sword intent, and each of them showed the majesty of a saint. Holy Spirit battle formation? Shi Pohei narrowed his eyes. A battle formation was a battle technique that supported and cooperated with each other. It was not rare. For example, when two armies faced off against each other, they would set up a battle formation and use tactics to command the troop. It was usually effective during the battle. However, after reaching the sage realm, setting up a battle formation was different. There were often harsh requirements because the cultivators had different paths and different strengths, so it was difficult to perfectly coordinate. However, Shi Pohei had heard that in the Blood Demon Ancient Realm, there was a unique battle formation technique. Every Sage Realm practitioner only needed to wear a treasure called the Battle Formation Talisman. Through the talismans of the battle formation, they could combine the strength of a group of sages and unleash unimaginably terrifying power. That's right. This battle formation is called Heavenly Path, and it means to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. If there were 800 true sages working together, their strength would be enough to kill a great sage. Xuechingi said in a low voice. Unfortunately, a portion of the true sages were sucked into the misty formation. Now there are only 500 of them left. Even so, the power of this battle formation is something that even I don't dare to face head-on. Shi Pohei and Hua Hongxiao revealed a wisp of surprise when they heard this. Xuechingi was one of the 8 greats of Green Underworld and the leader of the Blood Demon Ancient Realm. Yet, he said that he didn't dare to face it head-on. One could imagine how powerful this battle formation was. I didn't expect Brother Xue to be so well prepared. With this formation, killing that Lin brat will be as easy as flipping your hand. Shi Pohei laughed. Bang! At this moment, a shocking rumble came from afar. The sky-shrouding formation that covered the sky was destroyed. Instantly, the view became clear, revealing the figures of a group of peerless sages. What, only 20 or so people are left? Exclamations were heard. Xuechingi, Shi Pohei, Hua Hongxiao and the others' expressions changed. In less than a quarter of an hour, almost 100 peerless sages were reduced to only 29. This was a heavy loss. As for the true sages who were sucked into the formation, none of them survived. They were obviously all dead. Such a cruel blow caused everyone present to be enraged. Their expressions were gloomy, and their gazes uniformly looked towards the distant shore. There, Lin Sun's figure stood in the air. His clothes were neat and tidy, and his entire body flowed with a clear Taoist aura. But at this moment everyone felt a piercing pain in their eyes. Even their souls felt like they were being stabbed. All the hairs on their bodies stood on end. It was because of a bow. The bowstring that was dark red like blood on a ferocious longbow that was constructed from piles of bones and skeletons had been drawn to its limit. Wind and lightning surged around the longbow while space silently collapsed, and the inconceivable scenes of a saint falling to the ground appeared before everyone's eyes. There were golden crows crying blood, suns falling, and sages being killed. On the bowstring, a pitch-black arrow was nocked. Wherever the arrow pointed, it emitted a fierce aura that covered the sky and earth. Not good. Xuechingi, Shi Pohei, and Hua Hongxiao felt a chill in their hearts as they realized that something was wrong. However, when they wanted to stop it, it was too late. Bang! The sound of the bowstring was like a clap of thunder, resounding in all directions. The pitch-black blue sky arrow shot out like a divine rainbow from the 9 heavens, directly piercing a straight crack in the void. An incomparably terrifying and ferocious aura swept out along with this arrow. It transformed into a blazing and terrifying light as it whizzed forward. Boom! The next moment, the 29 peerless sages who had just escaped from the formation felt like they had been hit by a comet. The void there was drowned by the terrifying fierce aura. Far away, Xuechingi and the others tensed up and their expressions changed. What a terrifying arrow! When they opened their eyes and looked again, blood rained down and screams filled the air. The bloody scene was like purgatory appearing in the world. Chapter 1591. One arrow. 7 people were killed, 16 were seriously injured, and the remaining 6 were slightly injured. Such a bloody scene shocked all the people present. The battle formation had collapsed, and the casualties were already heavy enough. Who would have thought that Lin Sun's arrow would hit them in the head again? The most terrible thing was that the lethality of this arrow made Xuechingi and others tremble. They almost couldn't believe it. What kind of bow and arrow was this to have such heaven-defying killing power? Buzz. In this deathly silent atmosphere, Lin Sun had already bent the bow again, put the Mo-Li arrow with blue luster on the blood-red bowstring, and pulled it suddenly. The familiar sound of wind and thunder resounded in the field again. Attack! Xuechingi shouted. More than 500 true saints gathered together and formed the heaven-traversing battle formation, attacked together without hesitation. Boom! The incomparably vast sword chi that appeared above the void suddenly chopped down, and the tip of the sword was aimed at Lin Sun. Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly narrowed. He felt a pressure on his face, and his skin hurt. He couldn't help but be surprised. What a strong battle formation! However, although he thought so, he didn't stop. The Mo-Li arrow, which had been fully charged, suddenly changed its target and rushed out to meet the vast sword chi. Boom! An earth-shattering boom resounded. The Mo-Li arrow dragged along a resplendent dark blue divine flame as it collided with the vast sword energy in the air. The resulting shockwaves spread out, causing the nearby space, sea, and ground to collapse and explode. With a bang, the vast sword chi collapsed, but at the same time, the Mo-Li arrow was also blocked and shaken back. Lin Sun's figure flashed, and his blood and chi surged. This guy can block the heaven-traversing battle formation? There was a burst of exclamation. This was really shocking. It should be known that even saints didn't dare to take the attack of such a battle formation, but Lin Sun blocked it. Lin Sun snorted coldly. Although the power of the battle formation is strong, it's nothing to worry about. As he spoke, he waved his sleeve, put away the insignificant bow, and the Yuan killer sword appeared again. His figure flashed, and he rushed to the distance. He had seen that in half an hour, the entrance of the magnetic secret realm would completely appear in the distant sea. In other words, there was only a quarter of an hour left until the time for an incense stick to burn. Lin Sun decided to go all out. Kill! When he saw this scene, the cold and aloof Hua Hongxiao was the first to charge forward, and the boiling killing intent that had been suppressed in the depths of his heart completely erupted. Whoosh! In his hand, the long, snow-white saber swept out, and the world was torn apart like a piece of paper. The peerlessly sharp saber chi was enough to shock the world and make ghosts and gods weep. Lin Sun's body flickered, and Yuan killer sword stabbed obliquely, disturbing yin and yang. With a bang, it collided with the opponent's saber chi, producing a deafening explosion as if the sun and the moon collided. Hua Hongxiao's body froze as his pupils shrank. Only after exchanging blows with Lin Sun did he realize how terrifying his opponent's combat strength was. Kill! Shi Pohei had arrived. He held a peerlessly blazing silver halberd in his hand, and his entire body was bathed in bright silver starlight, causing him to seem like a god of war. A halberd slashed out. The terrifying energy of Saint Dao Laws was like a silver river that covered the world, and it was terrifying to the extreme. Dang! The broken blade swept out from Lin Sun's body and collided with the halberd. In an instant they had exchanged dozens of blows. Divine light burst out and the sound shook the sky. Lin Sun, on the other hand, fought fiercely with Yuan Killer Sword against Hua Hongxiao. At this time, Lin Sun was simply disdainful and powerful to the extreme. He was fighting fiercely with the leaders of two territories alone, and he was not at a disadvantage at all. This scene once again shocked the audience, as if they had seen a god. In the 9 regions battlefield, peerless figures like Green Destiny 8 represented the strongest combat force. Each of them led a camp of a territory, and they were all powerful and mighty. But now, Lin Sun alone blocked the killing of the 2 leaders. When the overmatches of the 8 territories hiding in the formation in the distance saw this scene, their eyeballs almost popped out, and they all cried out in shock. Rumble! The 3 fought fiercely from the sky to the ground, like dragons and tigers fighting, and the sun competing for glory. The power they displayed was so strong that the remaining saints in the distance could not intervene at all. In the distance, Zhao Jingxian stared at Lin Sun's valiant figure with her beautiful eyes, calculating silently in her heart. As long as I defeat Xue Qingyi and the other 2 and destroy that battle formation, the others are no longer a threat. This battle has already been decided. However, the entrance of the Yuan magnetic secret realm is about to arrive. Time is a little tight. As she was thinking, Xue Qingyi in the distance suddenly let out a long roar and rushed into the battlefield. Zhao Jingshuan's eyes narrowed at once. Lin Sun, time is almost up. Why don't you admit defeat? With a roar, Xue Qingyi waved his sleeve, and a big cauldron that looked like it was made of blood-colored jade rose into the air and pressed down. This was obviously a magical holy treasure. The body of the cauldron was branded with the totems of gods and demons, and the breath it emitted was extremely ferocious. As this blow fell, it was as if countless gods and demons rushed out and bombarded Lin Sun together. There's still a quarter of an hour. Why are you in such a hurry to reincarnate? Lin Sun's expression was cold. He ran all the methods in his body and released the mystery of the 3 into 1 without reservation. Boom! At this moment, the aura around him rose again. His blood, Saint Qi, and divine soul all merged into one, and his whole body shone brightly. As he waved his arm, the surging power spread out, causing the world to shake and tremble, as if it couldn't bear such great power. Bang! The Origin Massacre sword let out an impassioned and clear cry as it slashed out a blood-colored nether river, and it shook Hua Hongxiao to the point of staggering a few steps back. His expression changed indeterminately. Damn it! This fellow has actually attained the peak of the Saint Realm in all 3 paths. No wonder he dares to be so fearless. What? Shi Pohei's heart shook. The next moment, he was also shaken. His blood and qi tumbled, and his ear was almost cut off by the broken blade. Boom! At the same time, Lin Sun stepped forward, and a big abyss appeared around him. He suddenly operated, and the phantoms of the gods and demons were swallowed and annihilated like bubbles. Xue Qingyi was caught off guard, and the blood jade cauldron almost flew out of his hand. In an instant the encirclement collapsed. When they looked at Lin Sun again, the expressions of Xue Qingyi and the others all changed. There was a rare solemnity and a hint of disbelief. All 3 paths of cultivation had reached the Saint Realm. Such a tyrannical figure couldn't be found even in the 8 regions, and had only appeared in ancient legends. Who would have thought that they would actually meet a living legend today? No matter what, we must kill him. Otherwise, the ancient Desolation realm will most likely turn the tables in the Battle of the Nine Regions because of him. Xuechingi said with a grave expression, gritting his teeth. That's how it should be. Sure Pohei's face was also full of killing intent, and he didn't hide it at all. He had long felt an incomparably heavy threat from Lin Sun. Kill. The battle continued, but unlike before, Xuechingi and the other two leaders were all full of killing intent, and they didn't hold back. The threat Lin Sun posed was so great that it even made them tremble. How could they hold back? You guys can't fight one-on-one, but ganging up on me? You guys can't either. Lin Sun stepped forward, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. The Yuan killer sword and the broken blade intertwined, and he was extremely powerful. Xuechingi and the others snorted coldly and attacked with all their strength without saying a word. Rumble! For a moment, the battlefield was filled with earth-shattering roars. This kind of battle, not to mention in the Nine Regions battlefield, even in the Nine Regions, could be called an unparalleled battle in the Saint Realm, and it was enough to shock the world. The experts in the distance were all stunned by the means Lin Sun had displayed. They couldn't figure out how such a heaven-defying freak could exist in this world, no matter how they racked their brains. The most unbelievable thing was that such a person wasn't born in the Eight Regions, but in the barren and dilapidated ancient Desolation realm. Die! Suddenly, the Yuan killer sword was shaken away, and Hua Hongxiao seized the opportunity to suddenly appear in front of Lin Sun, and he slashed out with the long, snow-white saber in his hand. This saber was called Purgatory, and it had been passed down for a long time. Anyone who was killed by this saber would have their soul suppressed into the blade, and they would suffer as if they were in purgatory for all eternity. It was the most ferocious and vicious. But at this moment, Hua Hongxiao suddenly felt that something was wrong. Lin Sun's black eyes were deep and cold. Instead of panicking, he seemed to have been waiting for Hua Hongxiao to come. Then, Hua Hongxiao saw a mutton fat bottle several inches high appear in Lin Sun's hand. This is, Hua Hongxiao's body suddenly stiffened, and he instinctively felt a fatal threat. But it was too late for him to dodge, and he could only face it with all his strength. Swish! A wisp of sword chi swept out from the great whey bottle, and it demonstrated the mystery of one goes without return. Its sharpness was unparalleled and unrestrained. Boom! In the earth-shaking collision, Hua Hongxiao was directly blown away. Even if he tried to resist with all his strength, it was of no use. His body was badly mutilated, and his flesh was badly mutilated. His arms and bones were exposed, especially his chest, where the heart protection mirror had cracked and exploded, revealing a bloody hole. If he hadn't dodged in time, this blow would have been enough to kill him. This scene happened so fast that when Xuechingi and Shi Pohei reacted, their bodies stiffened, and they gasped in horror. Hua Hongxiao was seriously injured in one blow? If they knew that Jian Qinchen had been heavily injured by such a strike and perished in the end, then they probably wouldn't be so surprised. Boom! Lin Sun took advantage of this opportunity to make his move. Suddenly, an overwhelming Taishian sword qi emerged from his tall body, and it was mighty like an ocean of sword qi. In a flash, it enveloped Shi Pohei. 108,000 swords. Lin Sun's broken sword deduced the three inherited powers of Yuan, Ji, and Punish, and it gathered the three fused powers of Lin Sun to display the impermanence chop. The target was Xuechingi. At this moment, Lin Sun didn't hold back at all. He released his full strength and exposed his strength to the battlefield. Damn it! This guy hid his strength so well. Shi Pohei's face changed greatly, and he resisted with all his strength. On the other side, Xuechingi's eyes narrowed, and she couldn't care about anything else. She attacked with all her strength. The battle will be decided from this moment on. In the distance, Zhao Jingxian could see that the situation had reached a critical moment. Chapter 1592. 108,000 swords turned into Taishian. Each sword chi was enough to make any true saint desperate, not to mention the 108,000 sword chi gathered together. Shi Pohei tasted the taste of this blow for the first time. He was like a lonely boat in the vast sea, being beaten by the stormy waves and in danger of being overturned at any time. Bang! Bang! The dense sword chi poured down and covered all directions. Shi Pohei tried his best to resist, but the silver halberd in his hand was almost shaken out. And the defensive force around his body was also being bombarded by the sword chi. In just a moment, his face turned pale and he couldn't help coughing up blood. Without any hesitation, he sacrificed all kinds of treasures to resolve the sword chi. There were crystal-clear bells like polished purple jade, big seals engraved with flowers, birds, insects, fish, mountains, rivers, plants and trees and colorful treasures. This showed the foundation of a leader. Not only was he talented and powerful, but he also didn't lack any magical treasures and powerful Taoist magic. After sacrificing all kinds of treasures, he could barely resist the attack of the sword chi like torrential rain. But before Shi Pohei could take a breath, whoosh! In Lin Sun's palm, a simple wooden sword flew out. It was ordinary, but the sword was branded with the word Qi, which was full of Emperor Qi. It was also because of this word that this seemingly ordinary wooden sword had become completely different. When he saw this sword, Shi Pohei was so shocked that his scalp was numb. He cried, "Qi Emperor Sword, this is Jian Qingqian's trump card. How could it be in your hands? Could it be?" He guessed a possibility, and this possibility made Shi Pohei completely unable to calm down. However, before he struggled in the dense rain of swords, Lin Sun had already spat out a word, "Go!" The wooden sword swept through the air and whistled away. On the sword, the word Qi was full of obscure light, like a god coming back to life. The void couldn't bear it and directly exploded. Quick! Shi Pohei was unwilling to wait for death. Like a crazy devil, his eyes turned red, and he used his life-saving means without hesitation. It was a purple-gold bowl, which rose into the air and confronted the wooden sword. Boom! The earth quaked and the mountains swayed. This area of land was completely sunk, the boiling seawater pouring in reverse, producing tens of thousands of enormous waves. In the next moment, Shi Pohei's entire body suddenly plummeted down into the ocean. Blood flowed from his 7 apertures while his entire body had split apart, and he seemed like a person made of blood. After Hua Hongxiao, Shi Pohei also suffered heavy injuries. All of this took a long time to describe, but it was actually completed in an instant. It was unbelievably fast. On the other side, Xueqingyi was also being attacked to the point of being unable to cope. The broken blade was like a beam of light that could not be grasped. It was impossible to lock onto it. However, even though Xueqingyi was able to block it, he still received a huge shock. His bones and tendons were numb, and his blood and qi were flowing in reverse. It was extremely uncomfortable. This was the strike of impermanence. Impermanences were ethereal and unpredictable, capable of frightening ghosts and gods to death. When she saw that Shi Pohei was heavily injured, Xueqingyi's body trembled and her face was filled with shock. Qi Emperor Sword. How could Xueqingyi not know who the original owner of this treasure was? Xueqingyi's hair stood on end when she thought about the possibility that Jian Qingqian might have already perished. There's not much time left. I'll send you all on your way now. At this moment, Lin Sun's aura had reached its peak. He charged forward and slashed out with the Yuan killer sword. There was no return. Everything that Battle Emperor Wu Yang had learned in his life was fused into this sword technique. At this moment, it was displayed by Lin Sun's Yuan killer sword. A blood-colored sword Qi soared into the sky like the ruler of 10,000 swords. It was filled with an unstoppable and unstoppable aura. Kill! Xueqingyi was already entangled by the broken blade and couldn't get away. Seeing this, He went completely crazy and started to fight with his life. A talisman with blood-colored lightning wrapped around it was taken out by him. A destructive aura that shook the heavens and earth spread out as if a god of lightning had descended. Without a doubt, this was his life-saving move. Boom! In that instant, the two collided and the destructive shock wave spread out like an ocean. The heavens and earth were covered in white, creating a chaotic scene. The true sages that had gathered in the Skytraverser battle formation had to use all their strength to defend against this terrifying shockwave. The 8 regions cultivators hiding in the formation didn't have it any better either. The formation was shaken violently by the impact. In the end, Schwechingi coughed up blood and retreated with large step. His body was twitching violently and his handsome face was as white as paper. At this point, the 3 leaders were all heavily injured. One was defeated by the Great Tao Immeasurable Bottle, one was defeated by the Qi Emperor Sword, and the last was heavily injured by Lin Sun's Sword of No Return. From start to finish, it had only been a moment. However, the battle strength that Lin Sun had displayed and his domineering aura caused everyone to tremble. Was he still human? Countless people trembled in fear and despair appeared on their faces. At the start of the battle, they were fearless and set up a strong formation, thinking that killing Lin Sun would be a piece of cake. However, reality slapped them hard in the face several times. 30 peak-level sages attacked together, but they were beaten to a pulp. Nearly 100 top sages attacked together, but they were trapped in the formation before they could show their power. In the end, only a dozen of them survived. At this time, facing the attacks of the 3 leaders of the various regions, they still failed to suppress Lin Sun's arrogance. Instead, they were seriously injured one by one. A series of attacks were always unexpected, but the terrifying power that Lin Sun showed was enough to make everyone tremble. It was too terrifying. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that there could be such an invincible figure in the weak, barren, and declining ancient desolation region. At this point, you've used up all your trump cards. You won't be able to hold on for long. What are you going to do next? Schwechingi's face was as gloomy as water, and his voice was cold. I'm not going to do that, but I can send you to hell. Lin Sun took a deep breath, held the Yuan killer sword, and was about to continue attacking. But at this moment, there was a sudden sound of something breaking through the air, and the void was tumbling. It was Hua Hongxiao and Shi Pohei, who had been seriously injured, escaping together. Everyone present was stunned. Did they escape? The 2 peerless figures who ranked among the 8 skills of green darkness actually escaped without saying a word at this moment? This was too much of a surprise. Even Lin Sun didn't expect it. When he wanted to catch up with him, it was too late. Because when he fled, he obviously used all his strength, as if he wished his parents could give him 2 more legs. That was a clean and tidy move. Schwechingi's pupils dilated, and he was so angry that his eyeballs almost popped out. He couldn't help roaring, You are not worth my time." He was indeed about to explode from anger. They had already fought to this point, but Hua Hongxiao and Shi Pohei didn't even say a word and directly fled. How could Schwechingi not be angry? It seems that they cherish their lives very much. They think that as long as they are alive, they will have a chance to make a comeback. But if they die, everything will be in vain. Lin Sun's lips were full of disdain, and his black eyes were locked on Schwechingi. Jian Qingchen also wanted to escape, but I didn't give him the chance. I hope you can have some backbone, and don't imitate those stray dogs. What? You really killed Jian Qingchen? Schwechingi trembled all over. On the other hand, the bodies of the experts from the other 8 territories had stiffened. Because Jian Qingchen was a peerless sword saint who possessed terrifying ability to slaughter. Even he was dead? Isn't it better to ask Jian Qingchen after you're dead? As he spoke, Lin Sun had already rushed out in the air, using all his strength to kill. Every slash of his sword caused the great momentum of the universe to flow endlessly. The sword light was blazing and brilliant, disrupting the universe and breaking the meridians. Just the sound of the sword was enough to beat everyone's heart, making them feel like their guts were going to burst. Xueqingyi was an extremely cautious person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have endured Lin Sun until now to take revenge after he made a mess in the blood demon world. With Shi Pohe and Hua Hongxiao's escape, he had already realized that the situation wasn't looking good. When he saw Lin Sun rushing over, Xueqingyi's first thought was to retreat. He had no intention of putting up a stubborn resistance. He was the leader of the blood demon ancient region, and he had a bright future ahead of him. How could he be willing to fight Lin Sun now? Moreover, even if he fought with his life on the line, even if he won, it would only be a Pyrrhic victory. He wouldn't get any benefits, and he might even be seriously injured. But if he lost, the ones who would benefit in the end would only be Kuan Xiaoyu, Zhu Yingkong, Lai Qian, and Feng Wushu. If that was the case, Xueqingyi wouldn't be satisfied even if he died. It was at this moment that Xueqingyi made a decision. Retreat. He was even more decisive than Hua Hongxiao and Shi Patian. He completely ignored the true sages that had formed the heaven-traversing battle formation. As for the strong cultivators of the 8 regions hiding in the formation, he didn't care at all. They were just a bunch of people who hadn't become sages yet. If they died, so be it. Lin Sun, the next time we meet, I'll definitely kill you. Amidst the roar, Xueqingyi let out a venomous curse and took out a bloody bead. Boom! The blood bead exploded with power that covered the heavens and earth. The bloody air current wreaked havoc, causing Lin Sun to frown. He waved his sleeves to disperse the bloody air current. Xueqingyi's figure had already disappeared. Smart guy. Lin Sun sighed softly and didn't chase after him. Time didn't allow it, and neither did the situation. Their ultimate goal wasn't to kill the enemy, but to escort the top figures of the ancient Desolation region into the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm. And now, the entrance to the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm was about to be fully revealed. As for Xueqingyi and the rest, they might be able to live for a while, but before the Battle of the 9 Regions came to an end, none of them would be able to escape. At this moment, everyone else was dumbfounded. They had never imagined that Xueqingyi would actually flee after them. Moreover, he had directly abandoned all of them. Thinking of this, the true sages had the urge to curse. How could they feel good about being abandoned? Especially the strong cultivators who belonged to the blood demon ancient region. All of them looked as if they had lost their parents, and their hearts turned cold. Xueqingyi was their leader. But now, he had directly abandoned them. For a moment, the atmosphere was dead silent. Everyone's expression was gloomy. They finally understood what it meant to have one's heart die. Xueqingyi, Shi Pohe, Hua Hongxiao, and other leaders had all chosen to flee in order to save their lives. This blow was undoubtedly too heavy. Looks like the outcome of this battle will be decided in less than the time for an incense stick to burn. Lin Sun smiled. His black eyes were like lightning as he scanned the true sages in the distance and stepped forward. Today, he had said that he would stop any enemy from the 8 regions from entering the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm. Naturally, he had to do it. The highlight of the battle has come to an end. All that's left is to clean up the mess. Everyone, don't panic. The fate of Xueqingyi and the rest has been decided. Chapter 1593. The world was dead silent. Lin Sun walked in the void, his eyes fixed on the distance. With the escape of Hua Hongxiao, Shi Pohe, and Xueqingyi, there were more than a dozen top sages, more than 500 true sages, and a group of strong men from the 8 regions hiding in the formation of sea suppression. When they saw Lin Sun rushing towards them, they all woke up from the shock and their expressions changed drastically. Quick! Stop him! The top sages roared, their eyes red. Even ants were greedy for life, let alone top true sages like them. Unfortunately, they were all injured to varying degrees. The only thing they could rely on now was the 500 true sages gathered in the heaven-traversing battle formation. Boom! With a roar, the heaven-traversing battle formation was activated, and the true sages guarding a part of the void waved the apricot yellow flag. In the sky above the huge battle formation, streams of vast sword chi gathered, fusing into a brilliant sword chi that seemed to connect the heavens. This sword chi was so bright that even the strong men from the 8 regions hiding in the formation could clearly feel the destructive sword chi. With the heaven-traversing battle formation as the center, it instantly covered an area of 80,000 feet. It was extremely terrifying. This made the despairing and terrified strong men from the 8 regions feel a glimmer of hope. As long as they could stop Lin Sun and hold on until the entrance of the magnetism's secret realm appeared, they would be able to turn the situation around. Condense. At this moment, another 108,000 sword chi appeared around Lin Sun, but as soon as they appeared, they were swallowed up by the immeasurable great way bottle floating in front of him. Seeing this scene, many peerless sages suddenly recalled that Hua Hongshao had been severely injured by this bottle in one fell swoop. This made their faces change. The true sages in the heaven-traversing battle formation also clearly realized this. Without hesitation, they slashed out the vast and unparalleled sword chi. Boom! The sky and earth shook, and the sun and moon lost their light. When the sword chi fell, it was like a strike from a sword immortal. The power was terrifying to the extreme. Appear! At this moment, as Lin Sun spat out a word, the 108,000 sword chi suddenly whizzed out of the immeasurable great way bottle. At that instant, a boundless rain of swords covered the heavens and the earth as they whistled through the air. Every single one of them was dazzling and resplendent, and they flowed with grand profundity. As they whistled through the air, it just seemed like a myriad of peerless sword cultivators had attacked at the same time. Its impetus was so great that it caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to seem as if it had transformed into a world of the sword. Rumble! It was as if the heavens and earth were being split apart. In front of everyone's eyes, there was only endless bright light. Airflow that seemed capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth filled the surroundings, causing the heavens and the earth to transform into chaos while surging sword insight raged like a tsunami. Everywhere it passed, the scene of great destruction and terror appeared. After a long time, the light between the heavens and the earth gradually dimmed, and the air waves that wreaked havoc in everything gradually calmed down. The battlefield had long since changed beyond recognition. Heaven and earth were crumpled like a piece of cloth. This region of the sea had been split open, and the seawater had evaporated. Looking at the battlefield again, the heavenly traversal battle formation had long been destroyed. It was unknown how many true sages had perished in this confrontation. Broken limbs flew everywhere and blood dyed the area red. As for the true sages who survived, most of them were injured. Their faces were filled with shock, fear, and despair. The power of the heavenly traversal battle formation was enough to make a great sage retreat. But now, it had been destroyed as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Just this confrontation alone had caused more than half of the 500 true sages to be injured or killed. It was simply like a bloody massacre. Looking up at the sky, a person stood tall, his clothes fluttering in the wind, his body falling like rain. His countenance was already exceedingly pale, yet his figure still stood ramrod straight, and he was like an eternal god that looked down upon the world. At this moment the entire world trembled, and everyone was dumbfounded. This was an invincible power that could not be shaken, enough to make anyone in the 9 regions battlefield despair. This attack, Lin Sun was actually unharmed. This is impossible. This is impossible. Countless people's hands and feet were cold, and their bodies trembled in disbelief. This time, is it really going to be a complete annihilation? Some of the strong cultivators of the 8 regions had expressions of grief and despair. Is he really invincible? The 100 sages can't do anything to him, the 3 leaders can't do anything to him, even the heavenly traversal battle formation can't do anything to him? Someone cried out in sorrow. Lin Sun was like an invincible god of war, making people almost collapse. Only Zhao Jingxian let out a long breath and slowly calmed her tense heart. She looked at Lin Sun with her clear eyes. This was her man, and after this battle, his might was enough to shock the 8 regions, something that had never been seen before in history. Let's go! Run! Without any accident, the remaining sages and true sages in the field had all lost their fighting spirit. They did not dare to hesitate at all and fled in all directions. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. At this moment, Zhao Jingxian finally attacked. The fish that escaped the net were still fish. How could she let them escape? At the same time, Lin Sun took a deep breath, took out the insignificant bow, and directly pulled the bowstring without the help of the divine arrows. Bang! 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 The sound of the bowstring bursting was like dense thunder, resounding between heaven and earth. Every time a voice resounded, a rain of blood would erupt from all directions, and it was like fireworks were blooming in the sky. It was a dazzling and scarlet-red scene. In an instant, dozens of true sages and 5 or 6 sages were killed. But even so, many enemies still escaped. There was no other way. When those true sages and sages all escaped desperately, it was difficult for Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian to stop them all. Lin Sun did not chase after them. He stepped into the void and suddenly came to the depths of the Black Cliff Sea, in front of the formation of sea suppression. His face was as pale as paper, and his physical strength was seriously exhausted. But when they saw him at this time, the strong people hiding in the formation all showed despair and horror. Look, the entrance of the magnetic secret territory has appeared. Lin Sun looked over the formation and into the distance. There, above the sea, there was a virtual portal condensed there, emitting the obscure aura of the rules of heaven and earth. As long as the strong people who had the qualification to become sages entered it, they would have the opportunity to compete for the opportunity. But at this time, the strong people of the 8 regions all felt bitter, and their faces were ashen. They knew that there was no chance. Lin Sun waved his sleeves. Suddenly, the sea area was turned upside down. Without the control of Xueqingyi, the formation formed by the 24 Dinghai St. Pearls was no different from a masterless formation. It could not stop Lin Sun at all. In just a moment, the formation and the strong people of the 8 regions were put away by Lin Sun and suppressed in the Tower of Endless Way. This formation is composed of 24 complementary holy treasures, and each sea Saint Pearl can borrow the power of the sea. It's quite magical, Lin Sun thought as he turned his head to look. As far as his eyes could see, there were scenes of destruction, and blood, as if silently telling how earth-shattering the battle was. Zhao Jingxian walked gracefully on the battlefield, cleaning up the spoils of war. When Zhao Jingxian noticed Lin Sun's gaze, she raised her head, and a bright and intoxicating smile appeared on her beautiful, picturesque face. Lin Sun smiled knowingly, then turned around and came to the entrance of the Yuan magnetic secret realm. Suddenly, he felt a terrible power of heaven and earth, preventing him from approaching. He knew that it was impossible for sages to enter. Everyone, the opportunity to become sages is in there. Whether you can get it or not depends on your own ability. Lin Sun took out the Tower of Endless Way and released Silver, Little Tian, laughing at the heavens, Yechen, Mi Hengzhen, and other top figures of the ancient Desolation realm. Then, without explaining to them, he told them to enter the Yuan magnetic secret realm as soon as possible. But even so, when they saw the scene of destruction near the coast in the distance, they could guess that Lin Sun must have experienced an extremely bloody and fierce battle. This made their hearts tremble. Brother Lin, thank you. When we become sages, we will fight side by side with you and share the burden for you and the ancient Desolation realm. They saluted one by one, then entered the Yuan magnetic secret realm one after another, and soon disappeared. It was not until the last figure entered that Lin Sun breathed a long sigh of relief, as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. An indescribable exhaustion filled his whole body. In the previous battle, he had used all kinds of means to kill. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight, on the verge of exhaustion. Now, he finally escorted a group of ancient desolation experts into the Yuan magnetic secret realm, which was like a huge stone in Lin Sun's heart being removed, and he was completely relaxed. He sat casually on the sea, took out the wine gourd, raised his head, and drank wildly. After a while, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. If Xueqingyi and those idiots didn't run away and held on for a while, how could he be the final winner so easily? Although these guys had joined hands, they were obviously not united. Once they were in trouble, they were bound to fall apart. For example, Shi Pohe and Hua Hongshao didn't say a word when they escaped, which caught Xueqingyi off guard for a while. Another example was that when Xueqingyi fled, he directly abandoned his companions present. This series of actions led to their rapid defeat. A defeated army was like a landslide. You're too rash this time. Hurry up and meditate. I'll protect you. In the distance, Zhao Jingxian came over. Looking at Lin Sun's pale face, a touch of pity appeared on her face. Okay. Lin Sun readily agreed. He immediately took out all kinds of magic medicines and elixirs and began to refine and recover. Zhao Jingxian sat on one side with her arms around her knees, looking at the undulating black water in the distance. Occasionally, she looked back at Lin Sun with an indescribable sense of tranquility and steadiness in her heart. At the same time, in front of the city of Tao Protectors in the ancient desolation world. This city is completely made of hollow golden sand, and it's covered with a marvelous divine prohibition formation. It's very difficult to break through it, Zhu Yingkong said softly from afar, with a trace of admiration in his eyes. Lin Sun is really good. The atmosphere of this city alone is enough to prove that he is at least at the level of a Taoist tattoo master. First day of the month, please get a guaranteed monthly ticket. In addition, there are two things. 1. On New Year's Eve, Goldfish will find a big golden red envelope on WeChat to give back to everyone. Children, please add Goldfish's WeChat account, open WeChat, search for the account Xiaojinyu233, whose name is Xiaojinyu, add me, and wait for the red envelope. Chapter 1594. Zhu Yingkong was dressed in a bright yellow jade robe. His forehead was bright and clean, and his eyebrows were sharp like swords. His eyes were clear and bright, and they were clear and bright. He was the leader of the ancient Yin territory and the prince of the Illumination dragon bloodline. He was known as a rare genius that only appeared once in 10,000 years. Brother, we're here to attack the city, not to listen to you praise Lin Sun. Zhu Yingxue frowned to express her dissatisfaction. If we want to attack the city, we must first break the formation. This formation is both offensive and defensive, and it's complex and obscure. Even with my ability, it will take me some time to see through its essence. Zhu Yingkong pondered. Sister, don't worry. When we came, Xueqingyi and the others had already led a group of experts to set up a formation near the Black Cliff Sea. If nothing goes wrong, Lin Sun will definitely die. Without Lin Sun to guard the city, it's only a matter of time before we break it. His voice was filled with absolute confidence. That's good. Zhu Yingxue smiled sweetly. This time, be it Xueqingyi or Lin Sun, none of them had expected Zhu Yingkong and his sister to take the opportunity to destroy the city of Tao Protectors in the ancient desolation world when the metamagnet realm had descended. It was indeed a very bold move. But it was nothing to Zhu Yingkong. Not only was he confident in his own strength, he was also confident in his attainments in spiritual tattoos. One should know that the Illumination Dragon bloodline's inheritance in spiritual tattoos was one of the best in the entire 8 regions. Of course, Zhu Yingkong and his sister weren't the only ones attacking the city this time. There were also many experts from the ancient Yin territory waiting in the dark. Swish! Suddenly, a pair of strange halos appeared in Zhu Yingkong's eyes. One was black and one was white, just like yin and yang, and they flowed with strange mysterious runes. The candle dragon's eye. It was rumored that a terrifying being like the illumination dragon could see day when it opened its eyes, and night when it closed its eyes. When it breathed in, it was winter, and when it breathed out, it was summer. It could control black and white, day and night, and the rotation of the 4 seasons. Of course, rumors were just rumors. However, the candle dragon's eye was recognized as a first-class innate ability. Under the gaze of this eye, one could see through the true form of all things and see through the essence of all things. All falsehoods could be clearly seen through by this eye. This was also an important reason why almost all the experts of the Illumination Dragon bloodline had high attainments in spiritual tattoos. He would have an absolute advantage in cultivating the Tao of spiritual inscriptions with this magical power. It didn't take long for Zhu Yingkong to see the entirety of the city of Tao protectors, including the traces of the grand formation that were branded on the city walls. Everything was revealed to Zhu Yingkong. Formation, and 8 defensive formations. What a powerful technique. Even the underground is covered with Tao pattern array diagrams, allowing the power of heaven and earth to be contained in this city. As the saying goes, when the array is formed, the power of heaven and earth will be gathered together. He was actually able to create such a large-scale saint restriction in around half a year. He's not inferior to some of our clan's senior Tao inscription masters. Such a Tao marking layout is truly miraculous and rare. It's an inheritance of its own, and it transformed every single brick into a part of the grand formation. Why have I never heard of such a method? Why haven't I heard of it? Zhu Yingkong was surprised. Born in the Illumination Dragon bloodline, he had seen all kinds of Tao inheritance, but he had never seen such a strange one. It was like a city was completely integrated into a formation. The formation was the city, and the city was the formation. As long as the formation was not broken, the city would exist forever. If the situation allowed it, Zhu Yingkong could not help but think about it carefully. Because such a grand formation could absolutely be said to be unprecedented, and it was unique even amongst the 8 regions. Moreover, the profundities contained within it were shocking to the extreme. Lin Sun is a young man from the ancient Desolation realm. Where did he get this kind of Tao inheritance? Why haven't I heard of it? Zhu Yingkong was surprised. As far as he knew, there had never been any powerful sect of spiritual tattoos in the ancient Desolation realm, nor was there any powerful clan that passed down spiritual tattoos. However, Lin Sun had set up such an incredible formation, which was incredible. Zhu Yingkong did not know that Lin Sun's Tao inheritance came from Lu Boya, who did not belong to the 9 realms. If Lin Sun knew that Zhu Yingkong would be shocked, he would find it strange, because he had been learning spiritual tattoos since he was a child. Brother, can you do it? After waiting for a long time, Zhu Yingxue could not help but ask Zhu Yingkong. Zhu Yingkong woke up from his contemplation. His eyes flashed and he said, "Sister, I really hope that Lin Sun will not be killed by Xueqingyi." Zhu Yingxue was surprised. Why? This child's spiritual rune inheritance is extremely marvelous and powerful beyond imagination. It's not inferior to the supreme spiritual rune inheritance of our Illumination Dragon lineage. Moreover, it has formed its own lineage. If we can obtain such an inheritance, speaking of this, Zhu Yingkong's eyes were blazing. I am absolutely confident that I can reproduce the ancestors' act of proving Tao, and build the road to great emperor with the power of spiritual tattoos. Zhu Yingxue was shocked, but she was not convinced. What qualifications does that guy have to be compared with our clan's Tao of spiritual tattoos? Zhu Yingkong smiled, but he did not explain. As long as he knew how extraordinary Lin Sun's Tao inheritance was, it was enough. Sister, send someone to the Black Cliff Sea to take a look. If Lin Sun is dead, remember to take his relic. Zhu Yingkong ordered. Will Xueqingyi and the others agree? Zhu Yingxue frowned. She knew very well that Xue Qingyi invited her brother Zhu Yingkong to deal with Lin Sun together, but her brother refused. Zhu Yingkong said without hesitation, "Then tell him that I only want Lin Sun's relics related to spiritual tattoos. As long as he agrees, I, Zhu Yingkong, will owe him a favor." Zhu Yingxue was completely shocked this time. She knew very well how high her brother's status in the ancient Yin territory was. Any big shot would be tempted to owe him a favor. From this, it could be seen how much Zhu Yingkong valued Lin Sun's Dao inheritance. Without further delay, Zhu Yingxue left in a hurry. Zhu Yingkong stayed there and continued to use the eyes of the candle dragon to see through the secrets of formations hidden in the city of Dao. The more he looked, the more tempted he became. It was as if he had found a path to becoming an emperor, and he couldn't help but feel a strong desire to obtain it. But soon, Zhu Yingkong calmed down. The most important thing now was to see through the essence of the formation, destroy the city, and destroy the foundation that the ancient desolation camp relied on to survive. Xiaohao and Ruowu stood side by side on the city wall in the distance. Sure enough, after Lin Sun left, some guys with ulterior motives took the opportunity to jump out. Xiaohao frowned. He recognized Zhu Yingkong. The Candle Dragon bloodline is best at spiritual tattoos. He's obviously trying to decipher the secrets of the city's grand formation. If he really succeeds, it'll be bad. A serious expression appeared on Ruowu's face. Zhu Yingkong seemed to be alone, but he had the entire ancient Yin territories camp behind him. It was enough to make anyone afraid. Once he saw through the secrets of the city of Dao, the grand formation would be useless, and it would no longer be able to protect the city. As expected, none of the 8 absolutes of green destiny are easy to deal with. But we don't have to worry. Lin Sun said before he left that we'll be invincible as long as we stay in the city. Xiaohao smiled. Ruowu sighed softly. You know, I'm most worried about Lin Sun now. Even Zhu Yingkong dares to swagger here. Who knows how many dangers are waiting for Lin Sun in the Origin Magnetic Secret Realm. Xiaohao was silent for a moment, but he still smiled and said, "Let's see what he's capable of." Lin Sun said it himself. Since he dares to go, he must be confident. I hope so, Ruowu murmured. Time passed slowly. Zhu Yingkong's expression became more and more serious. Even with the eyes of the Candle Dragon, he still felt that it was extremely difficult to decipher the secrets of the city's grand formation. It was obscure and complicated, but the most fundamental reason was that he had never seen such a formation before. Brother, bad news. Suddenly, a panicked voice rang in Zhu Yingkong's ears. He quickly withdrew his gaze and turned around, only to see his sister Zhu Yingxue rushing towards him anxiously. What happened? Didn't Xue Qingyi agree? Zhu Yingkong frowned. No, it's Xue Qingyi and the others. They lost. Zhu Yingxue looked panicked. Zhu Yingkong was also caught off guard at this moment. He was shocked. As far as he knew, Xue Qingyi had gathered over 100 peerless saints and over 800 true saints. Apart from that, there were also Shi Pohe and Hua Hongxiao, the 2 leaders. Killing Lin Sun alone was as easy as flipping one's hand. But how did they lose? Zhu Yingkong's first reaction was to wonder if the information was wrong. But after hearing Zhu Yingxue's description, Zhu Yingkong's expression became uncertain. If that was true, didn't it mean that Lin Sun alone killed Xue Qingyi and the others? How was that possible? Not long after, the sound of something breaking through the air came from afar. Some peerless saints of the ancient Yin territory flew over, all of them looking shocked and panicked. Young master, bad news. Xue Qingyi and the others were defeated in the Yuan Magnetic Secret Realm. According to a saint of the ancient Star Fiend who was lucky enough to escape, nearly 100 peerless saints were killed on the spot. Xue Qingyi, Shi Pohe, and Hua Hongxiao were no match for Lin Sun and were forced to flee. Young master, we shouldn't stay here for long. Amidst the cacophony of voices, Zhu Yingkong finally understood the ins and outs of that battle. he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air as his heart trembled. How could Lin Sun be so ferocious? Could it be that he had created his own cultivation method and was invincible in this realm? But even so, it was impossible for him to block the attack of Xueqingyi and the others alone. For a moment, countless doubts surged in Zhu Yingkong's mind, making his expression uncertain and uneasy. Brother, should we leave quickly? Zhu Yingxue was so scared that her face turned pale. Just hearing the news made her heart go cold. It was too unimaginable and terrifying,